Are we live yet? Hopefully we are. Hopefully the audio is coming through just fine. We've got Arts is here. Woohoo! We got Master Knight DH. We have Drige. Hopefully Totally Tommy is still around. I said on the last one I planned to watch this, but I got tired and went to sleep. Well, hopefully you are here this time. And welcome everyone. Welcome. Good evening, good morning, good day, wherever you are at. Hope that you are having a great time. And today, we are going to finally be finishing up the 3-part lesson on beginning your stories. How to write the openings, how to do the beginnings. And this is the big one tonight where people have shared their the beginnings to their stories. And we're going to read through them. We're going to provide some insights, some critique, and hopefully we can all benefit from this exercise together. And ISO's here. Fantastic. Woohoo! So, I think I will wait just a wee bit, see if Nathan or Scott are able to soon jump on and join. And also wait for a handful of other people to come on as well, because we do have Hana, who is working on getting everything set up for her submission. So we'll try to get that up as soon as we get it from her. But we already have 5 submissions from different people, along with the opening to one of my stories that we will read through, and we're going to get through all of them tonight. Woohoo! Master Knight says, I'm hoping I have satisfactorily addressed potentially coming across as sexist. Sexism is an inevitable topic, and peer pressure aspects also don't help. All right. So, yeah, Master Knight's got some pretty weighty stuff in their story, and we will be talking about some of the we'll be talking about what we do read of your story, Master Knight. I have it on the dock. Anna's here. Woohoo! Good to see. Hannah, did you post the artworks that you wish for us to show for the opening of your story onto Discord? If not, you still have time to do that. Okay. So, let's see here. As far as getting some housekeeping stuff out of the way, before we begin reading. So next Friday will be Valentine's Day, and I do intend to do a live stream on that wonderful day of singles awareness, and I think I'll also double that as a cruisy playthrough. And I'll try to get one other one done next week before Friday. So hopefully we'll see it. We'll see what all happens. But I do intend to start. I do intend to make my way through as much of that as possible, get ahead of Toby Fox's release, and as you can see with my Elden Ring footage playing, since Night Rain will be releasing in May, that means I should probably also do my revenge tour through Elden Ring sooner rather than later as well. Which will be a combination of live stream videos and then probably some little bits here and there in between, because Elden Ring's a long game. It takes a long time to play through it, and I don't think most people have the patience to sit with me for 6 hours while going through just one part of the continent and grinding my way through getting revenge on every single sucker that caused me pain the first time through. And it says, by do the best I got so far. Well, awesome. Art says, wow, more advanced Deltarune coverage. Amazing Gamer, I'm actually starting to come to the last chapter of my 5-part story. It's kind of bittersweet. Been working on it and keeping it under wraps for 3 years. But I don't know if I'm ready for it to end. Endings are something else, Amazing Gamer. Believe you me, especially when you get them to the end of something you've been spending a lot of time with. I've already gotten the first full draft done for my last book in the Legend of the Ten Lords series. And it's interesting having done that, having completed, because I'm like, wow, I got this far. This is amazing. And oh my gosh, there's so much to do. There's still so much to complete. I think that when I finally have that thing fully edited, finished the way I wanted, with the cover art done and everything, then it will finally slam me. It's like, oh, I'm done. Something that I've been working on since 2015. So 10 years I've been working with this series. And with some of the characters, some of the ideas, even longer than that. Finally bringing it to a close. Whew, that'll be something. I still have to watch that time I married a goddess video. I hope that you enjoy it. It's definitely the longest one. Looking back at it, I'm like, I probably could have split this into 2, but I was like, I'm ready. I'm ready to finish this story and get on to the revenge run. Art says, endings are just as hard, if not harder. Endings are really, really hard. As Alex Hirsch once said, the only thing harder than the beginning of the story is the ending. And with Gravity Falls, wow, Gravity Falls is such an incredible ending. And if you were to just jump from the first episode to the last episode, yeah, it would feel like 2 completely different shows. But the themes, the implied darkness, the weirdness, the humor stays consistent throughout. And that is something that the first episode establishes really, really well. All right. So, with all of that said, let's just start diving on into this, because there is a lot to read. There's a lot to get through, and I'm hoping that we can have a good time all here together. So, let me pull up the slideshow. That will get us started. Whoop, I'm over here at the last slide. George says, sometimes I forget that you are a monster of a gamer. I am not a monster of a gamer. I just do some gaming. I am not a gamer. And if you get me with everyone else to play Super Smash Bros., I'm the button masher. The unrepentant button masher who chooses characters like Rob and Charizard and Kirby because I know I can cheese them and troll, and it's really hilarious. But I will be nowhere near as good as anyone who knows how to use Link or Zelda or Peach or Mario to their fullest. Oh, I see. A monster is the one who uses brute force. Okay. Yes, I am the kind of guy who goes for the brute force option in gaming. All right, so opening your story part 3. Ba-ba-da-doo. Our goals for this particular lesson tonight, we are going to recap what makes a strong opening. And here's the thing. When we do that, I do want everyone to write down somewhere on their phones, on a separate doc, on a piece of paper, on a Post-it, mark it on your forearm, just not in permanent marker. What makes a strong opening, or at least some of the things that make a strong opening. So that way we can constantly be referring to it as we start going through people's works. Next thing that we will then do is we will read through the submitted openings that everyone gave, and I do want to preemptively again thank everyone for their submissions. You guys were awesome. And then we will provide some constructive commentary for each of these openings that we read. So let's start getting into that. Master 98 says, I recently did a tier list for Kid Icarus Uprising, covering boss battles normal. Hey, fantastic. ISO, wave of gold spasms and enemies into oblivion. Yes, yes. Because when you get Radigan's Blade, you might as well just be like, yes, just yeah. Well, I guess it's not technically Radigan's Blade. It's the blade. It's the very shrunk down version of what the Elden Beast is using. And yes, I will use that. Actually, I'll say this real quick. For my revenge tour, I'm going to play it at first as Ronnie's consort for like the opening of just going around and just like smashing and getting revenge on a boss. So on one of the major bosses, I will do it as Ronnie's consort, but I've already altered my character's stats to then start building up to a caster, because I want to try that. I know I'm not going to be very good at it, but I want to try it out. This is going to be fun. George says, time to schizo right on my walls. Amen. Good on you. Good on you. TV account. Hi, sorry I'm late. What did I miss? TV account, you really haven't missed much. Just the introduction to what we are going to be doing tonight, which is reading through everyone's submissions. And as we have right here on the slide, recap what makes a strong opening for a story, read through the submitted beginnings that everyone has given, and then provide constructive commentary. You've hopped in at the right moment. So, returning to the checklist. Ooh, I love checklists. Does the beginning of the story, the first scene or the first chapter, does it establish the atmosphere, meaning the feel that the story will have throughout? Remember, tone and atmosphere are very different. Tone is in the moment. This is the humor, the tension, the romance, the drama, the anxiety, the fighting, the action. That is the tone. The atmosphere is generally, does this book feel like a drama? Does this book feel like dark fantasy? Is this book going to take you by the seat of your pants and hurl you from point A to point Z at a neck-breaking pace? Somewhat similar to reading The Da Vinci Code or Angels and Demons, both of which are really fun books. That is what we're talking about with the atmosphere. Does the beginning of your story introduce us to at least one of the main characters, if not the main character? Does the beginning of your story give us a hint at one of the main conflict that we can expect to see throughout the book? Does it give the audience an indication of the story's overall pacing? And pacing is one of those really weird and tricky things. As we will probably get a feel of as we start reading through these submissions. But you want to kind of give people already an idea just how long, like people can, for instance, they can look at a book or look at a movie and a show and already kind of know, okay, based on the number of episodes, based on the runtime, based on the girth of the book, I kind of have an idea of what I'm getting myself into. However, pacing still does determine how all of that flows. The Lord of the Rings extended editions are incredible, and for me, their pacing is so good that even though they're so long, you don't care. You're just caught up in the adventure, and it's amazing. The Da Vinci Code is a chonker of a book, and you blast through that thing because the pacing is so dang fast, as opposed to another chonker, which is something like a Game of Thrones, which is so slow to read through. Isa says, do forgive me if my submission is a mess. It's only a third first draft. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, Isa. We will not be blasting grammar or spelling in this video. Instead, we're going to be looking at, again, these big things. Finally, will the audience, will your readers learn something critical for later thanks to the beginning of your story? So, to recap, does the beginning of your story establish the atmosphere that the rest of the story will have? Does it introduce at least one of the main characters in the opening? Do we get a hint of one of, if not the main conflicts? Does it give the audience an indication of the story's overall pacing? And will the audience learn something critical for later? These are the things that we need to keep an eye out for in being able to better understand if a story's beginning is strong enough to really hold people's attention, to hopefully take them throughout the rest of the story. And as we will see, there's many different kinds of stories being told right here. This is comparing apples to oranges. If we were trying to say, well, this beginning works really well, but I don't like this beginning, unless we have criteria to help us judge the apples and oranges. George, me looking at my previous works where the pacing goes to Game of Thrones to Murder Drones pacing randomly. Check. All right. So, here we go. Let's read and review. For this, I will be jumping back and forth between my screen and then coming back on over here. Say, a part of me thinks that I should just have gameplay going as I read through this, and maybe I might do that for some of the longer, longer stories. But I do want to show you guys what everyone has written. I feel like that's really positive to see other people's work, because for one thing, it shows you that they've actually done it, and it's also encouraging to you. Sometimes like, oh my gosh, so-and-so wrote so much, and I've written so little. Well, as you will see as we go through this, there are some people who've written very little, but it's still the beginning of their story. And we're going to judge it based off of the criteria that we have. So even if you feel like I've only written a page can do a lot. Sometimes a page can do more than a few thousand words. Other times, the few thousand words delivers everything that you want. So again, apples to oranges. And being able to see other people's work, I find to be very helpful, very cathartic, very rewarding, and very self-reassuring, in my opinion. So, with that being said, hey, we got Nathan here. Woohoo!
Hello.
I was worried I would be doing all this alone.
I am here. I was trying to figure out dinner, but we got pizza on the way.
Pizza. Yeah, my dinner, such as it was incredibly rushed. It's like, oh crud, I got to get ready for this. And then my sister and my niece were visiting, so. All right, so Nathan, we are right now about to jump into reading the submissions that people have given to us. And I don't know. Did you catch what I was talking about, what we're going to be looking at as far as criteria goes?
Not really. No, I missed that.
Okay. So I'm going to then hop us back right over here, just that way you can see it. This is the checklist back from 2 weeks ago when you and I did this.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is kind of what we're looking for. Does it establish the atmosphere? Does it introduce at least one of the main characters? One of the big conflicts? Does it give us information that'll be useful for later? Does it help to establish the pacing? And here's the thing, and I'm going to say this already, is that even if your story, your beginning doesn't have all 5 of these things, that doesn't mean it's bad. This is just to help us look at what makes an opening strong. And if there's anything that's missing, then maybe we can look at this criteria and then say, maybe you need to focus on something like this on point 1 and 5, maybe, to make it a stronger opening. It's not bad, it just can become stronger. And it says right here, you might have to read the prologue in the 2 chapters because it is so embarrassing. Don't worry, Hannah. We are not here to roast you. We are here to help. That's what we do. We'll roast each other.
Absolutely. We'll have some good lighthearted jabs at each other all the time. But that comes with the territory. But we will not. Our goal here is not to roast anybody, but to help. We realize that these are obviously, early drafts of stories that are most likely incomplete in most instances, and so as it stands, anything that fits that criteria does not deserve to be roasted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, if we were talking about the beginning to Powerless by Lauren Roberts, that would be a different roasting. I'm just kidding. But take it away.
Yes, but real quick, Hannah, I quickly checked in the back. I'm still struggling how to submit my work. Hannah, you had said that you wanted to do drawings, that you wanted to show us what you could do as far as your comic goes. If it's comic based, please post the artwork on our Discord. Post it in the art section, in the art channel. We can then pull it up from there and then make sure that everyone has the chance to see it. If it is written, it needs to be submitted onto the Google form. There's a link for the Google form on the community tab. That is the best place to put it, because then you can just dump it all in one big chunk. All right. So I hope that helps you out right there, Hannah. And allow me then to share my screen. Okay, so Hannah says, yeah, it is the script. Okay, so Hannah, just make sure you put the script then over onto the Google form, and then I'll be grabbing that up later, and then we'll splash on out there for everyone to see and for us to read through. So, as Drudge says, we're all a little embarrassed. Yeah, we've been there. We've been there, Drudge. I like getting ready for this. I had the chance to think back to when we first got started here as Camille Server. Not exactly here, back in Flagstaff.
Almost 10 years ago.
Yeah. Wow. It is so crazy. Okay, here we go. We'll have the little swirl of infinity, and then boom. Okay, here we go. This comes from ImmOmega, and we have the Marsdore Genesis. Nathan, do we want to do voices, or shall we just read this straight through?
Let's see. I am on mobile, so it's very small and nearly impossible to read. So yeah,
okay,
I'm sorry. I probably won't be much help in the reading department.
No worries. No worries. Okay, so here we go. ImmOmega, whose working title for his story right now is Marsdore Genesis. Marsdore Genesis. Says right here, this is a whip, so please be aware. Don't worry, ImmOmega. We understand, and we're going to be A-okay. We start off with a black void. ? A character whose name we're not supposed to know yet. You shouldn't have been here. We then cut to the shot of two figures in an underground area. Chip, with two P's, Chip is being held in by the scruff of the neck by a figure wearing the hyper ganger suits. Behind is a massive Stargate-like device with liquid in its passageway. Chip, you don't have to do this! In the distance, we see the other members of Chip's team coming in. ? Number 2. Kaiser, we need to complete Genesis! We then see ? 2 call out to first ? Is this Kaiser who's calling out? Not exactly sure just yet. What are you waiting for? Finish him! We see ? grit his teeth under the helmet and quickly shift his weapon to gun mode. ? I'm sorry! Chip, wait! Gross! We then see ? blast the Caesarean in the chest before cutting to black. All right, so I will stop sharing for a moment right there. And bring up game footage again. All right. So based on what I am seeing from what ImmOmega wrote, is I'm guessing, and actually I should have said this earlier. I'm going to say it right now before I forget again. When this live stream has ended and it's then just available for anyone to see, there will be timestamps for everyone to go back and have a look at these particular stories again and again and again, especially for those of you who submitted your stories. So that way, if you heard something that you're like, ooh, I really need to go back to that again, you will have a timestamp and you'll be able to go back to your story. So ImmOmega, you will have your whole section of your video right here for us to discuss. Okay, so jumping back to it, so it's very clear to me when looking at the layout of this particular submission, of this particular story, that we're looking at what's either meant to be the script for a show or the script for a video game. And I'm right now leaning more towards video game at the moment, just because
I was gonna say it could also potentially be the script for like a graphic novel as well, potentially.
Ooh. Okay, yeah, very good. Yeah, because it's clear that, like, if this were a book, you'd want to make sure that, for instance, you let people know the names of these characters because you want people to already connect with these characters, or you want to then describe those characters. You want to give them descriptions, so that way if we don't have a name, we at least have a description that we can go off of, like Tall and Scruffy, or Mr. Baldhead, or Mr. Meat Hands. Something like that. But the reason why I bring up that it could be a show or a video game or a graphic novel is because that does determine how this reads, how this flows. And so as someone who writes more long form, who writes books, I cannot say, well, because it doesn't have this as a book writer, it therefore sucks. No, not at all. I now have to judge it based off of, based off of the criteria that we have and what was presented. So, Chips seems to be our main character. So we've already got one thing covered. We know that there's something going on with Genesis. It's both in the title and it was given to us right off the bat. Probably something to do here with this portal. So there's a bit of a mystery. We got the name for something important, but we don't yet fully know what it is. Main character, we've got a big conflict. This was really abrupt right before everything cuts to black. So this kind of lets us know that we might be in for a very fast-paced kind of story. And so, yeah. So I'm already, even though I don't know what's going to happen afterwards, I'm already picking up good, important information. And I think that that's really good. Here, I'll actually share my screen again to bring up to bring up the script.
Yeah, that'd be great. I was gonna say I'd like to look it back over again.
All right. Yeah. So as far as like any sort of immediate critique that I would have right off the bat, I have to admit, because I don't know more about the story, I would have to either continue reading or playing through, reading through, or ImmOmega would have to give me the key, the codex that has all of the important information about a hyperganger suit, who Kaiser is, who Chip is. But for what I have right here, again, I've got what I need. It might seem a little bit excuse me. it might seem just a little bit rushed. But then again, if that's the kind of pacing that ImmOmega wants, then it's good. This might then be the kind of story where really a lot of visual storytelling is happening. The one thing that sticks out to me, where I'm like, I don't know how to interpret this, is Caesarean. So are we taught, because there's because when I see that, when I see Caesarean, my very first thought is the people who follow Julius Caesar. And so like I'm curious why this little descriptor is right here. Are the Caesareans a particular group within this world? Are they an ethnic group, a political group? Is that maybe his classification as a worker, or as a soldier, or as a spy? It's interesting. Like I want to know more, but it's the one thing where everything else definitely has like a good like sci-fi feel to it, and then I see Caesarean, I'm like, that doesn't fit. At least with my inner cogs, I'm like, I don't know about that.
I was just gonna add. I think that's a good point. For me, and I know this is obviously I'm trying to gather my thoughts.
No worries.
Like I'm not super familiar with how a script of some sort of visual media would be written, because I've never really gone down that rabbit hole. And so I don't know what the industry standard is for something like this. But I would say, like, I think, kind of given the action and the like dialogue, like I think that is great. But one of the things I would really like to see here is more description of what things look like. Like, obviously, this isn't going to be a book, so you don't need to go into like, Tolkien level of detail on like, every individual little thing. But, and I know as somebody who started writing a graphic novel, how easy it is to just say, like, oh, I'll fill in this information when I actually go to draw it, or in this case, whenever the visual media is presented, we'll just fill in the blanks. But now is a really good time to nail down what these characters look like, what kind of outfits they're wearing, like that kind of stuff. That can also bring a lot more atmosphere to the story. So I think this would be a really good time to expand upon, like, obviously, if you're handing this to somebody being like, I want you to read my script, this, especially at the beginning, is the time to set the scene, right? To show what the scene where these characters are standing. Are they, it says that it starts off with a black void. And then they are in an underground area. Are they in like are they inside of a basement? Are they inside of a cave? Like, just give us some more. Is it a big, grand area inside of, maybe inside a huge cavern with crystals? Or is this, a dark, dank, tightly confined space? Like, this could all be a lot of really good information to help portray the atmosphere. And then when you do eventually go to the visual media side of it, you already know kind of, this is what I want it to see. This is, and it'll be easier to kind of show off like the atmosphere that you are going for.
Yeah. So, and Nate, to answer, that's great insights. And that actually ties into what I did right here. So I added in my own edits. This is nothing that ImmOmega wrote, but you now see there in bold. What I did was I separated the dialogue from the description in the way that most scripts would be written. I'm actually in a weird way used to probably by now a more archaic way of doing scripts where you have columns, one column that says here's the action, one column for the dialogue, and then one column for like music or background details that you can then see all together right next to each other. But the way that most scripts are written is that you have the dialogue break, say what's happening in the scene, and then back to dialogue.
Yeah, I've definitely heard both things used. But I don't know what the industry standard is, of course, but because it's not really an industry that I am in, you know. But I think that I really like the mysteriousness of it. I really like kind of the fast paced of it as well. But I think just kind of fleshing out the atmosphere would be a good thing to kind of add on to here.
Yes, that is one thing that's one thing that's definitely missing here is the atmosphere. Not just the atmosphere for the scene, but also to let me know what kind of a story I'm getting into. Like I am interested. I am interested in the characters, in the setup. I want to know what's going on. I'm eager to see more. But just on its own, if this is the only thing that was presented to me, it definitely lacks the atmosphere. And so that is what can be added through the details of the scene, some of the details of what the characters are doing, how the characters appear, as you were saying. That will make this way stronger. And I need to stop sharing real quick just to see what people's might be saying right here. I
also want to make sure that I give mad props to ImmOmega for sharing this in the first place, and for being the first one. That's always even more nerve-wracking. So props to you.
Yes, yeah. Unfortunately, I don't see ImmOmega here in the chat, but mad props to ImmOmega and to everyone who submitted. Like, it's really, really amazing what you guys have done, because it is a big deal to put your work out there and for others to see, and especially in a public forum. But Art says, it gets your attention. I'll say that. It definitely does. ISO says, I somehow fell 2 minutes behind in the stream. That was weird. Interesting. ISO says, about the cesarean part, I remember reading a book once that was about a segment of the Roman Empire that was isekai'd into a fantasy world, and they basically took over. That was a fun story. Oh boy, if Caesar's legions got isekai'd anywhere, wherever they get isekai'd to, better just like nuke them, because Caesar's legions were insane. They were really rough to deal with. Art says, didn't J.K. Rowling write one of the Fantastic Beasts movies? Like, she wrote one of her books and didn't really work from script to screen all that well. Exactly. Script. Taking a book and transforming it into a script is a talent all in its own, and not everyone is able to do it. Good writers might not be good screenplay writers or good script writers, because it's a very unique skill. ISO, seeing something Roman in a sci-fi setting is weird, and yet it feels like it has a lot of potential to be unique and fun. I agree. ISO says, from my experience with stories like that take historical groups and put them into their own stories and genres, I am very excited for this to be released. Yeah, and I really do want to see ImmOmega do more with this, because I think, like, I'm hooked. Like, I'll admit, I got hooked by this opening. I want to see more, and that is what a good opening should do. And the more that ImmOmega works on it, the better it will be.
Yeah, and one thing I actually really like is, I know it's a pretty short opening, but that's actually one of the things I really like about it, is that it doesn't feel like it needs to hang around and outstay its welcome. It's, let's set up some mystique and let's move on. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't try and try and overcomplicate it. So very well done.
Yes. All right. Real quick, I am checking on Hannah's submission just to make sure that we have it here. So sorry about it. Sorry about this. Just real quick, viewing this in Sheets. One of the nice things about Google Forms is how you can plop everything into an Excel spreadsheet and quickly find people's work. Ah, I see. Okay, got it. I'm requesting access to your work, Hannah. You just have to give that to us, and and then we'll be able to pull your stuff up later. Okay. Hey, Mojo Sir's here. It's been a while. So we're telling stories we made? Yes, we did. And Mastermind says, Kaiser isn't just a German term. I see, but I'm seeing something called Genesis. So something starting, yes. Kaiser, Genesis, the beginning, all good stuff. All interesting words. I'm someone who does appreciate some good wordplay and some good meaning. All right. I am quickly scrolling on over to our next submission, and I will share the screen. This will be from Arts 1984 this time. All right, back to the Eternal Swirl and hopping on over. So again, this is from Arts 1984. This is from I'm Human, Chapter 3. And on the, let's see here, Arts. If I remember correctly, this is on the Deltarune subreddit where you've been publishing some of these stories. So here we go. From the diary of December holiday, date unknown. Dear diary, pun intended. Day 3 of Chris staying over with us. The kid's been eating very little, and communication has been very little to none. I hate seeing them like this. They refuse to take calls from their family, even Azzy. All they do is spend all their time in my room looking up at the ceiling or sleeping when they don't burst out into tears every few hours. I guess finding out your life's been one giant lie will do that to you. One day, you're an adolescent goat monster waiting for your horns to grow in, and the next, you're a human, adopted by monster parents because your human family was too freaked out by your existence. Now, the Dreamers are coming over to talk to Chris in one big group family intervention. The kid's only 12. It's not like they're doing drugs. Chris needs our love and support right now, not a talking down to. The hard part has been getting them to listen. The only thing I got on my side is they apparently still like me despite being a part of the big bad group that lied to them. Guess they got to get this over with. I really, really hate today. Deliberately yours, Des. Des slammed her pencil down and shut her diary, tucking it into her pillow. Turning her head, seeing a rather downtrodden Chris sitting on the ground, playing with the carpet. Des got up, walking over to the kid and offering her hand out to them. Hey, it's time. Anytime you want to go back upstairs, I'll step in, all right? Des whispered. Chris nodded, looking up at the young doe, taking her hand as she pulled them up off the carpet. There we go, Des smiled, dusting off the kid's shirt. Are you sure you don't want to change? We got plenty of clothes your size. The kid shook their head, their eyes beginning to leak again. Hey, Des dropped to her knees. We don't have to do this. I'll tell Mom and the others you're just not ready. No, I'll do it, Chris spoke. Their voice cracked while trying not to cry. Sniff. Oh, Christmas. Des ran a finger over the bottom of Chris's left bottom eyelid, wiping a tear away. This just isn't you. I hope we get that firebrand back. At least when you're tormenting Noelle, you were happy. Now I just... Des felt the human embrace her, the doe wrapping her arms around them and placing her head atop their own. Chris didn't want to leave the embrace, but reality was going to settle in one way or the other. And that is the opening from Arts. All right. So, again, for anyone who doesn't immediately recognize, this is a fanfic for Deltarune, and one that's unique that in that we are getting a perspective from a character that we haven't even seen in the game yet, one who's only been mentioned, and that, as far as the game's lore is concerned, thus far has gone missing, mysteriously so. We know that Des, Chris, Azrael, and Noel used to be friends, hung out together. Something happened. Des vanished. Families broke apart. And Chris has been weird ever since. Chris has always been weird, but now weird in a very depressing way. This story takes place before any of that. So, immediately, things that I get out of this. For the tone, the tone with its anxiety, its frustration, its melancholy, all come through really well for me. Having read other
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, other segments I've had the chance to read for this, the atmosphere is consistent, which is really good. We've got our introduction to Des and Chris, who seem to be our main characters. We've got the introduction to the problem, or at least one of the problems, which is Chris is an adopted human in a town of monsters. No. Curse you, landline. I have it around for a reason, for the aliens. But there's no alien invasion right now. I hope. So we've got our introduction to one of the problems and characters, atmosphere. As far as learning something that'll be important, I guess that Chris Chris is adopted. But one of the things I like that's already done here in this segment, in this opening, which is done with very few words, and I like being able to see that brevity is something I don't have a strong suit in, is that the relationship between Des and Chris, I think, is well communicated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you think, Nate? Anything that popped out to you?
No, I think, well, just a question, because I've never played Deltarune, so I'm not super familiar with the characters and stuff. Is this the third chapter of the fanfic, or is this in reference to the third chapter of Deltarune?
Say Arts can give, I think, a better answer than I can. I believe that this is the third installment in I'm Human, and and I've read 2 other installments, so I believe
this is the beginning of the third installment.
Yeah.
So would it be? Sorry, I know I'm just trying to have a better grasp of it. Is this is each installment more akin to a chapter or more akin to a book?
That's a good question. From what I've read, and Arts can correct me on this if I'm wrong right here, each installment is more akin to a chapter. From what
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I seen the theme here. Arts says third chapter of the fan fiction. Okay. Yeah. No. I think that this is really good. I was gonna say, if this were the very first chapter, I definitely, again, would like to see a little bit more description of, what's going on, like, around the characters, like the scene, what the characters look like. But if this is the third chapter, then a lot of that will already be set up. So that point kind of becomes moot. I really like the dialogue. I think I really like the atmosphere. I think is really good. If you wanted to kind of like dive into or not dive into, like accentuate the atmosphere a little bit more, here's one kind of trick that I sometimes use is if you look at like if you look at just any sentence that you like, if there's a sentence that you really want to like punch the atmosphere out in that sentence, one thing you can do is you can kind of go into that sentence and find the like descriptor word for what is happening, and kind of find a different way to describe the sentence. I'm trying to think of a good example. But I'm gonna go find my laptop. I'm
All
not
right.
entirely sure where it is, but I'm gonna find my laptop because I have a really good example of that. As an example, I can kind of show. But in the meantime, I just was gonna say that I think that this is a great beginning. And I think that I really like the little diary entry. I think that's a really fun way to kind of get into like that kind of like that first person headspace, because writing a story is always kind of, I feel like there's kind of a give or take, right? Because it's like obviously third person, you kind of have the freedom of a narrator to kind of be the buffer between characters, but then first person can also be really fun to kind of get into the specific character's mindset, um, which can also be very difficult, because especially if you're writing a book in first person that has multiple characters' point of views, it can be very hard to make every character sound really unique. But I feel like what ours has done here, with the diary entry being in first person, kind of gives you that internal, that splash of like the internal monologue without it having to go full on onto that first person, because it can be really difficult and really awkward to write a whole series in first person when there is like multiple characters that you're seeing points of views from. Anyway, this is all a very long-winded way of saying that I like the diary entry because it gives us a dive into the brain of the character.
Yeah. And actually, Nate, I want to build up on what you said earlier about like more description. Even though at this point this is the third chapter on in, and so like we've already then gotten descriptions about kind of what the characters look like and everything, and a little bit about the general environment that the story takes place in. Um, the the thing is that again, as the audience, whether you do not know Deltarune or if you've played Deltarune, none of us have yet been in Dessa's room. And because Toby Fox hasn't given us that part of the story yet, what that means is, Arts, is that you have the opportunity to kind of plant your flag and describe what you think Dessa's room could be like. Does Des go with the whole holiday flow where everything is Christmassy? Or is Des a bit of a rebel and has a completely different room that isn't Christmas themed like Noelle's house is? And you can actually use that environment even to help bring out some more of the mood. Because, for instance, if everything's very Christmassy in Des's room, that it would then show it would show even more how just kind of despondent Chris is, because they're not wowed or engaged with any of the cool decorations around. They're just playing with the floor. They're playing with the rug. Or if, as say right here, so you say, imagine yourself as a rebel like Chris, then in a way, Chris can feel at home, and you can even have that in there. You can even have like a little detail in a sentence or two about how Chris normally would be at home in Dessa's room, checking out her guitar or hanging out around her books or whatever it is. But in this case, Chris has completely fallen in on themselves in the middle of the room playing with the carpet. And so that little bit of detail about the physical environment and atmosphere helps to accentuate the tone and atmosphere of the story. So what Nate brought up can help bring out more of that feeling and just really hammer it home, as well as give the readers an insight into who you think Des is. All right. Thank you, Drudge and ISO, for giving Hannah a little bit of help right there. I'm quickly checking to see. Okay. Yes. Looks like I've got contact with Mojotale. Fantastic. What I will do, what I will be doing here is I am going to take the prologue. So I will be taking that, and I will be placing that into a proper spot on our main doc that we've been reading off of. Making space. Oh, that's gonna be fun. All right. Okay, so Hannah, I've got the story, and when the time is right, we will get to your story as well. So don't you worry. Let's see here. I guess Nate is still looking for his laptop, so I'll quickly catch up with some stuff right here. Mojo Service says my story is a murder drones universe, but for a while now I have my story on pause because a lot of IRL stuff always happens to creators. Yes, it does. So many real world things that just get in the way. Say, I know how that goes.
Okay. I found my laptop, and I found, well, I kind of found an example of kind of what I was referring to. So kind of what I was trying to say, right, is like there is, I feel like with writing, especially when it comes to like wordsmithing, there is definitely like we have this like tendency to like focus on each individual word and making them like really pop out. But really with any sentence, the word that matters the most is going to be the verb, I feel like, especially when you're trying to set like an atmosphere. And so in one of my more recent writings, I kind of, you can imagine the scene, right? And when you're putting the scene onto paper, it's really easy to just describe or to just kind of explain what's happening. And the example that I have in this one is that like, there's a merchant coming down the road and you can hear him whistling and like as the sun is setting, right? And so that is the scene, right? And so you might write that as like the merchant moved his way down the road and the sound of his whistling filled the air as the sun set. Basically gets the point across, right? But if you look at the verbs inside of that sentence, and you can use those verbs and change them up to add different kind of different atmospheres to that scene. So the example I have here is that I wrote, as the merchant trundled towards the girls, the sound of his whistling warmed the twilight air. Right. And so what that does is that gives us the atmosphere of like obviously like if he's trundling, he's not really like trying to come with any sort of great haste. He's just kind of, this merchant is bumbling in a sense, and his whistling is very jovial, very bright and warm, right? But I could at the same time also say, as the merchants like schlunked, or what's the word?
Schlepped?
Yeah,
Slunk?
schlunked. Yeah, schlunk. That's the word. Thank you. As the merchant schlunk towards the girls, the sound of his whistling chilled the twilight air. You know what I mean? Like, or I could say something about how the sun was retreating behind the distant mountains, and how, like, at the end of the day, I'm describing somebody whistling as he's going down the road and the sun setting. Like, all three of those things are happening still in the same story, or in each example, but the way that they are described, specifically just in the verb, is what makes all the difference. And so that was what I was trying to find, because I think that you've done a really good job with that story, like explaining kind of like what's happening. But I think that there might be a few instances where you can look at the verbs and try and figure out what verbs have a better emotion attached to the atmosphere that you're trying to convey. But yeah, that's, like I said, I really like the beginning, and as somebody who doesn't know anything about Undertale, I think that it's a great start.
Yeah. Say sorry about that. Sorry about that second phone ring. I had to quickly rush out, take the phone out of my office space because my sisters are all calling. Yay. Family drama. All right. Say thank you, Nate, for bringing all that up. That's
Yeah, of course.
that's really good, and just wordsmithing is fun.
It is, and it's also kind of stressful at the same time.
Yeah, it can be. Trying to find those perfect words for the perfect situation, everything. But no, it's good to do. It's good to do because it's another way to flex a good creative muscle, and it also helps with like finding really neat ways of expressing something that you don't then have to spend a sentence or two to then say in a much more bland way. And people do like coming across interesting words and descriptions. It keeps things interesting and going. So,
yeah. Well, and I just think about that. What is that? What is that line from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy where it's like it hung in the air like a brick doesn't, or something like that? Or it's like obviously a brick doesn't just hang there in the air, so it's like it's funny because it kind of makes you think the opposite. But I was just looking over the comments, and for arts, they said that's a balance I've always struggled with in my writing. Some feedback I've gotten on my professional writing is that I could always expand on my descriptions. And that's actually something that as I've helped beta read for others, and read other unpublished works, I've definitely noticed, or even, people's first published works, oftentimes that is a big struggle point for a lot of new writers and new authors, is trying to find the balance of how much should I describe the world around me, because it's like you can go really hard, which I remember when I tried to read Les Miserables, it was awful to get through because there was just so much description. But at the same time, you could go the opposite way where it's like it's very hard to draw up a mental image because there's just not quite enough description. And so it's something that will just come with practice, and that is something that that definitely, as you write more, you're going to get a better sense of. And that's awesome, because even I think my pizza's here.
Ooh,
There's
pizza!
somebody at the front door. I look at, my first draft of my first story, and there's not a lot of descriptions. Even what I read to you guys 2 weeks ago, there wasn't a lot of description of the spaces around what was happening. And that is something that in my second novel that I've been working on, I've really worked on trying to add more. And so I get it. I think we've all kind of been there. We want to get to the meat of the story. We don't want to spend all this time setting up the emotion and the world around us. Or we want to, we don't want to spend too much time because we don't want to over stress it. But it's definitely something that I think most authors struggle with. And so don't feel bad that is maybe a pain point for you, if it is, because it is for most authors. So
yep,
that's all I got on that. I'm gonna go get some pizza.
All right. Go get your pizza, man.
I hope that was more encouraging than it was disappointing. I started talking. I'm like, am I making this seem really sad, or is this encouraging? Anyway.
No, it's good. It's good to have and being able. We share these experiences because people will connect with them. We want people to know that we've been there. We're not sitting on some high horse like, yes, this is how you create the perfect story. Because we're not like that at all. If we tried acting like that, we'd be absolute posers and revealed to be the idiots that we are if we tried. Yeah, say Arts, I've seen that how you don't and I've seen your work, and your work does deserve more commentary and feedback and interaction. It's just that, especially on a site like Reddit, unless you're on a particular subreddit where people are used to engaging in good hefty stories with some interesting dialogue, you're not going to get that, unfortunately. And that's something that I've had to come to terms with on Reddit, here on YouTube, and on other platforms as well. So it's just people just aren't quite used to that. Excuse me. Whew. Dinner is trying to kill me from within. But Arts, I hope that you've gotten some good insights and everything that'll help you to make this even better, because it's good. It's good, and I'm honestly happy to see that someone is taking a Des fanfic seriously and going in an interesting direction with it. And as you shared with me on Reddit as well, what your intentions are, what you think about Chris, and what Chris and Des's relationship might have been in canon. And I like that we're getting that exploration. So thank you so much for sharing that. And as Nate is getting his pizza, I don't want to exactly pounce this on him in the middle of him paying for pizza and then quickly grabbing a slice to eat. But ISO, you will be next. Once
I'm here. I'm just smacking away.
Okay, smack on away. But yeah, so ISO, you are next in our reading. So allow me then to share my screen yet again. Get ready for the eternal swirl. The eternal swirl is here. And hopping on over. Okay. So, this is from Isaac Kosterman, or as we tend to know him better, ISO, for the story with the working title Shadowbound. Alice's lungs burned from the strain of running. She gasped for air, desperately trying to breathe as she darted through alleyways and back streets, exhaustion creeping up on her. She listened, her ears trying desperately to pick up any sound other than the one of her own footsteps and breath. Alice glanced behind her, hoping beyond hope to see the empty street behind her, but no. Her eyes caught the side of the... Clutching her satchel close to her chest, she scanned her surroundings, searching urgently for a place to hide. No such luck. Her plan for the darkness of the night to conceal her presence from the patrolling guards worked against her in the end, as she could hardly see where she was going, let alone find a place to hide. Alice's eyes were drawn to a light from ahead. The growing orange glow of fire on the walls alerted Alice to the approaching patrol, likely already searching for her in particular. As 3 guards rounded the corner, Alice froze in place, eyes darting around for another alley to escape down. It was no use. She was cut off. She turned around but saw the torches illuminate the walls behind her as the guards chased her into the alleyway. As the torch lights rapidly grew closer from both sides, panic set in. She was going to be caught. Alice looked around one last time, looking for anything that could help her, but there was nothing. She sighed, dreading what she was about to do. Pressing her back against the wall, Alice closed her eyes, focusing intently. Okay, here we go, she thought to herself. Please work, please work, please work! And with a hushed phrase, the surrounding shadows began to shift, drawing in towards her and enveloping her body. As the light from the torches reached where she stood, she was already invisible to prying eyes. Captain, where'd she go? One of the guards asked. I don't know, the captain replied, confusion in his voice. She did come down this alley, right? She did come down this way, right? A guard from the second group questioned. I thought so, but she must not have. Great, so we lost her. Now what do we do? Another guard asked. Fan out. She can't have gone very far, the captain ordered, and his men complied with a brief salute. As the torchlight faded from the walls, for the first time since that morning, Alice finally felt a sense of safety, even if it was just a little bit. She relaxed her focus, and a wave of exhaustion washed over as the shadows around her ebbed back into their original shape. Sav had warned her against using this power too much, but considering the circumstances, Alice didn't see that she had much of a choice. She only hoped that she would never know that it had become she only hoped that she would never know that it ever became a necessity. She sank to her feet as her legs finally gave out. She was completely spent from the events of that day. All this effort, all this trouble, all this commotion for a single flower. Alice opened the satchel in her hands, breathing a deep sigh of relief to see the crimson red of the Akali flower undamaged from her attempt to escape the authorities. All right. So thinking back to this, seems like we've been introduced to one of our main characters, Alice. I like the feel of what we got right here. So the working title right now is Shadowbound, and we got plenty to do with shadows, all right. So we got a good connection right there. The pacing was nice and quick. Don't yet know if this is going to be the pacing throughout the entire story, but since this is an action scene, I kind of get the feeling like, okay then, so I know there'll be some action later. This was well paced. I like it. So even if the story slows down a little bit, like this hooked me. This got me going. The only thing now to make sure is that if the next chapter or the next part of the story is a little bit slower, that you don't pump the brakes and make it ridiculously slow. That's just something to watch out for. We've gotten a hint, even though I don't know anything about the main conflict of the story at all from this, that's okay, because I got an interesting clue, or some interesting clues. I don't know who Sav is. Seems like an interesting individual, someone to look forward to learning more about. but especially this Akali, if I'm pronouncing that correct, Akali flower, this crimson flower that has been stolen, that all of these guards are chasing Alice to retrieve. So even though I don't yet know what the main conflict is, or even if this is one of the larger conflicts within the story, the cauliflower seems really interesting. Alice can use some special shadow powers. This is all some good stuff for me to know later as I go into the rest of the story. I'm getting a good feel for what I'm getting into. It feels like I'm getting into some kind of urban fantasy by the feel of it, or maybe this is more in the past kind of fantasy, since all these people are using torches and not actually flashlights, so it might not be quite modern urban fantasy, but there's an urban feel to
unless
it.
it's in oh my gosh, in London, where they use the term torches to refer to flashlights.
This is true. Yeah.
But I was gonna say that it almost kind of gives off Final Fantasy VII's opening just a little bit, and that might just be because I've been playing Final Fantasy VII, the remakes, but just like them hustling away and doing it all for a flower. It just kind of reminds me of that. But I really like the imagery here, especially like the shadows, and I think that adds a lot of like that piques your interest very well, and kind of makes you think about like, oh well, what does this mean? How does that work? And like what was it that that the main character said to create this kind of like magic, or I guess it's magic, huh?
Yeah.
Sorry, I wasn't like, I was trying to pay attention best I could, but I definitely missed some stuff while I was chomping down.
Yeah, because pizza.
Pizza.
Yeah, right.
Pizza.
Yeah, right here.
Pizza takes priority above all else.
Yeah, with a hushed phase, the surrounding shadows began to shift, drawing in towards her and enveloping her body. As the light from the torches reached where she stood, she was already invisible to prying eyes. I really like this part. I really like this description right here. That came through really, really well for me while reading this. So, like, this is good. Like, this is, and as Iso said earlier, this is just like this is still a rather sloppy draft, but that's okay. That is absolutely okay, because there's always extra work that can be done, everything. But the big things that you really need to make this strong, like, again, we know one of the main characters. We've gotten some hints about the magic, about a character that we might meet later, Sav, and what's happening here with this flower. Say that's good. The pacing was good. I kind of get a feel for the general atmosphere of this book. So it's ticking off all the things that it really needs to be strong. And you don't have to tip your hand all that much to get people interested. Not at all. Let me quickly pop back on over here.
Yeah, I was going to say, I am really enjoying this opening. I think the one thing I would like to just see a little bit more of is just a little bit more description of what the characters look like. Again, kind of just a little bit more to kind of give me a better sense. And maybe you did and I just missed it. But other than that, it's a very good, very solid start.
Mm-hmm.
Adds a lot of intrigue, a lot of action, and a lot of questions that can help kind of propel a reader to read the rest of your story.
Yeah, and say I saw, and as far as like suggestions that I would give for this, let me actually hop back on over. There were a couple places where I think where, like, again, wordsmithing will be your friend for this. So let me hop back on over. So this was one part where I felt a little bit confused, and I just think a little bit of clarity will help make this particular part just make more sense and even flow better. So right here, Sav had warned her about using this power too much, but considering the circumstances, Alice didn't see that she had much of a choice. She only hoped that she would never know that it ever became a necessity. So I'm guessing in this case that the other she is Sav. The problem is that when you have two she's right next to each other without properly differentiating who is who, it can be easy for someone to make a mistake in understanding which she you are referring to. I'm guessing in this case that the other she is Sav, and this is where you had mentioned in the chat right there that Sav is her aunt. This is where you can already make that connection without saying Sav, Alice's aunt, or Alice's aunt Sav. You can say she hoped that, and I'll change this right here. Whoop. So again, I'll just put this into bold to highlight that this is my edit. She only hoped that her aunt would never know that it ever became a necessity. So like just thinking a little bit about which words you're using. There was and I make this mistake all the time as well. ISO. So don't feel like I'm trying to single you out or call you out for this. But a lot of so there's sentences that begin with as and, which I do all the time as well. And just in the editing process, I have to think about how I might begin that sentence just slightly better. And then things don't feel quite as repetitive, and it gets far more engaging, interesting, as Nate said, as you put in more description for the setting and for like how Alice is feeling or how Alice might be looking to an outsider. That helps to just kind of flesh this out way better, and you will find how to match that with your pacing. Your pacing is excellent. I would not want to add in full paragraphs to add in that necessary detail. This is wordsmithing. This is what word can I swap with this? What extra words, like 2-3 words, might I add right here just to make it more clear? And as you do that, this will become just stronger and stronger. Like these are good bones, good foundation. For me, it's doing what it needs to do. It just needs edits. So hope that's, make sure I put a little note right here. All right. So I hope that gives you some ideas of what you can focus on. Isa says, as for the shadow powers, while they have now been revealed, only Alice at this moment even has the powers at all, and that remains consistent until the inciting incident. Okay, very neat, very neat. I like seeing that. So unfortunately, the descriptions were not well written, so I cut the chapter in half. LOL. I could put in here in the chat, but I don't really like it. So you don't have to share it with us if you don't feel like it's really all that good. It's just something to think about and something that you just take your time to work on and just improve. And like, again, as I said, the foundation's there, the bones are good. It's just a matter of editing it a little bit more so that way it is the best that it can be. So the big thing is that Alice is blonde and Sav is her aunt. Advice taken. All right. Let me just quickly make sure that I make a good note right here. That can't be right. So I'm just making sure that I have down the approximate timestamps for each person, so that way I can go back in here later and make sure that once this live stream is done and it's fully up on YouTube for people to go back and review, that, again, the timestamps will lead people to their stories. Master Knight DH says, yeah, undoubtedly I have my own problems with character description. I was more focused on covering the more important details. And yeah, the important details of like dialogue, of setting who is doing what is very important. And it really is a juggling match, or a game of juggling, I should say, of getting down what is most needed when. And it's so easy to get distracted and put a lot of interesting details, maybe even important details, in places where they don't really need to be. So writing is learning how to juggling words. All right. Dredge can comment again. Great. Okay, so let's see here. ISO, unless you've got any further questions for us, I am ready to move on to our next submission. And I know that you've been working on Shadowbound for a while, and I like finally having the chance to see some of the stuff that you've brought up in past live streams, as well as in the Discord. I like that we're finally getting to see some of those details, some of that story finally on the page, at least for ourselves, because that's fun. Like this is something that I definitely want to see more of from you. I want to read your story, which hopefully for everyone whose works we've so far reviewed, hopefully you're feeling encouraged. That's like, hey, Lars and Nate are hooked. They want to see more of our story, and
I want to see all of it.
Yeah, like that's good. The beginning of a story is meant to hook people, get them interested, and you're getting us interested into your stories. So so far, really all positives that I'm seeing here. Okay, then let me make sure that I've got our next story queued up. Art says, I'm just glad to get feedback. Well, we are happy to give feedback. Okay, then let me make another note. And let me then share the screen yet again.
I was going to say, just real fast, while you get that pulled up, one of the things I feel like most new writers have the hardest time, like obviously, most people have access to a laptop, most people have access to the internet, so they can really find a lot of the resources that they need. Except I feel like the hardest resource for most new writers to find is good feedback. And this is something, Lars and I have talked about ad nauseum. Maybe not necessarily on the live stream, but we actually have a friend of the channel who recently wrote it's very, I'm trying to think how best to describe it. It's very literary fiction. Yeah, it's very introspective. It's more of a literary fiction book. And she shared it online with the beta readers, and the beta readers just said that she needs to add more dragons to her book.
Yeah, they crucified her.
Yeah, because she didn't have dragons. They just wanted her to write Fourth Wing. And it's like, you completely miss the point of the novel, right? And so it's like, that's one of the things that we here at Camille's Harem always try and be very aware of, that like we are not here, like we want to give you feedback that you can actually help, or that can actually help your story become the best story possible, rather than us trying to overwrite your story. And so I hope that this has been good, and I hope that you can find some useful feedback to help your story grow. And just know that so far, we really like all of the stories that have been shared so far. I imagine we're going to like the rest of them.
Oh, yeah.
But, and I'm just glad that we can be a part of it, to help how we can. And I know we are not the most qualified individuals to be giving feedback, but I feel like every little bit of feedback you get that is actually helpful to you is a bonus.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I'm just going to quickly insert in there. I like when we first got started writing, I was definitely guilty of trying to overwrite other people's stories at first. So it happens, and I'm sorry for the times I did that in the past. But I've learned
You were always very tame.
Giving good critique is a skill that needs to be developed. But it can
Luckily,
be done.
I had a lot of experience in art school to learn how to critique people more helpfully, and hopefully that's come across. But I think critique is one of those things that are essential but hard to find.
Mm-hmm. I agree. All right, are we ready? So this right here is from Random Person. Working title is The Loop. And I've actually had the opportunity to already workshop part of this story. And I am impressed with what Random was able to do just overnight with fixing some stuff up. And I think you guys will find this opening rather enjoyable. All right, so a man lets out a long sigh as he leans against an unkept, graffitied wall. He puts his shirt sleeves back as he glances down towards a watch. Still 8, huh? This ain't ending soon. The man walked back through a glass door with a long look on his face, staring off into the distance for moments at a time. As he walked into a grease-stained kitchen, a figure in a semi-formal attire voice called out to him. "Hi, Theodore! You're half an hour over your break. This is the 3rd time this week." The man stood idly. "Sorry, boss. Just getting used to schedule is all. We are down 3 people. We can't afford to have you sitting around. I'll call Jason to work. We're in need of a competent employee here." The figure says he walked towards a chair before pulling out a phone. "Oh, and take your fryer. You're on cooking duty." Theodore begrudgingly followed, ignoring a splash of oil from the fryer as he grabbed a worn-out handle on the basket. He stood for a little while, only bothering to move his hands and shoulders when the fries or nuggets were cooked. Batch after batch, he would remain standing as he watched his supposed boss scroll on his phone. Theodore dropped the fryer's basket, letting another batch of fries sizzle as he checked his watch. Now it's 9 o'clock. He swore he'd been here for longer, but time refused to budge. His boss hadn't looked up from his phone once. With a sigh, Theodore washed his hands and grabbed his jacket, stepping out the back door. A flickering streetlight buzzed, casting long, distorted shadows across the alley. His reflection wavered in the kitchen's greasy window. Or did it move on its own? He rubbed his eyes, shook his head, and walked away. Theodore left work with the same drained expression he arrived with, walking slowly while staring off blankly. The alley outside reeked of fryer grease, and his footsteps echoed loudly against the cracked pavement. He reached a bus stop and leaned against the shelter, glancing at the lone man seated on the bench. A business suit hung off his bony frame, his arms stretched long enough to brush the sidewalk. Theodore did a double take. Normal. The man was normal. He shook his head, stepped onto the bus, and rode in silence. By the time he reached his apartment, the hallway lights had dimmed to a faint blue hue. He unlocked the door, stepping inside. A click was heard. His monitor hummed softly in the darkness, and an open document visible, titled Cover Letter. Theodore sat down with the dimly lit room, breaking the surrounding silence with his typing and occasional click of his mouse. "Guess I'll still try," he said in a failed attempt to cheer himself up. as he began typing on a worn-out keyboard. He sat there for as long as he worked, focused on the glow of his monitor as it illuminates the bottom of his drooping face, his shadow flickering faintly against the back wall. The sky had shifted to a black or faint blue as Theodore turned to his side to take a sip from a blank white mug. As Theodore's eyes grow increasingly thin and tired, something slips into the side of his view. A creak draws Theodore's attention as the bedroom door opens. Not much, but just enough to reveal a silhouette. At first it appears as a man, but he can muster a conscious response. He examines closer, and it seems unquestionably off or disproportionate. Arms at rest against the floor, a torso stretched tall, a leg almost dented out of shape with its freakish, bony build. However, what caught Theodore's eyes wasn't any of the wrapped parts of the man before him. It was its face, or his own. He blinked and leaned in to examine it closer, but his guess was only affirmed. The baggy eyes, the straight strands of hair that ran down his left eye, the scratch on its nose and cheek. It was all features on his face. A look at its clothing didn't help either, as a blue and green flannel was worn by both of them along with a beanie. Theodore didn't keep track anymore. It mirrored him as it stared back at him blankly, almost as if it was experiencing the same sense of shock. As they stood and sat frozen within each other's view, as a pair of red glowing dots rapidly grew behind Theodore and outside a window, causing him to lose sight of the figure as it began to let out some sort of cry or desperate order before the window broke with a glare of red, causing Theodore to slam to the floor and turn cross-eyed. His view went dark. He arose from his bed, panting, and looked around his room. Soon after, Theodore slowed down and let out a sigh of relief, mixed with a sense of confusion, as he looked out endlessly before catching sight of a sticky note on the desk beside him. As shifts over to read, his concerns grew back once more, eyes widening. The figure was real. Another note was under it. The red dots were there. Theodore grew frantic. They won't notice anything. He didn't wait this time. Theodore jumped out of his bed, throwing the blanket onto the floor, and slammed the door shut before turning to his window, where rain droplets softly tapped outside on the blue shifted room. He untensed and pulled his view back onto the set of notes left on his desk. Slipping on a beanie as he made his way, he picked the first one up and held it just below eye level, reading the message once more. What was the figure? He questioned. What was all that about? Can't just be a bad dream, right? He says he read the remainder of the notes, each as vague as the last, until he caught eyes towards the window once more as the sound of rainfall suddenly stopped as the glass continued to be showered. Theodore froze as he heard a soft creak from where the door was as his monitor displayed a blank red screen, which the window soon began to follow. He was not doing this again. He grabbed his computer and hurled it towards his window as he leapt backwards. As he leaped towards it, a familiar scream emanating from behind him. Theodore shielded his face and eyes, preparing to fall on wet concrete, but nothing happened. A moment later, and still nothing happened. As the man opened his eyes, he found himself standing within the middle of a school or office hallway, large with red carpet and wooden walls. However, aside from the broad-line teleportation, Theodore couldn't help but feel estranged. This place is quiet. Too quiet. As he walks around, he feels something off about this place. Maybe it's the emptiness of the area, or its seemingly endless expanse. A cascade of off-white walls, cheap gray carpet making up a room after featureless room, a view unbroken by anything at all. No window that could show him the outside world, no piece of furniture, no decorative painting, not even a corporate poster to break the monotony. Just the stretching of the same hallway before Theodore and seemingly after him. Bam, bam, bam.
That was very well written. I enjoyed that a lot.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, as far as like atmosphere or wordsmithing goes, I have almost no complaints. Um, the one thing I did notice, and this is not really an issue at all. This is more of just like a small little nitpick. Is I would there's a lot of times where um, who wrote this again? Random person.
This was written by random person.
Okay, yeah. The one thing I would do is where there's ellipses used, I would change those to M dashes. Um, just because I feel like that reads better in a book. Usually, like, I mean, in text messaging, doing the dot 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 is like really common. But I don't feel like the dot 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 translates as well into like a book. And so I would recommend, unless you're using them in dialogue, oftentimes they should be replaced with M dashes, just to help with readability. Other than that, I have very few complaints. I think that this is obviously, I can tell it's been workshopped because I feel like so those kind of situations I would replace with an M dash.
Yeah.
And if you're wondering what the difference between a dash and an M dash is, the M dash is just the big version of the dash, which you'll a lot of times see in like in like professional books and stuff. Yeah, I think that this was great. What was I? Oh, that's what I was saying. I can tell that it's been workshopped because I feel like a lot of the immediate issues that usually would jump out to us are not really there anymore, and so it really just leaves more of the technical kind of stuff, like the M dash. The other thing I would be wary of, and this is something that random person does a pretty good job of like mitigating, but there are a few instances where it definitely feels like some of the sentences are a little bit longer than they need to be. Like they can be broken down. And also that would help with like sentence variety a little bit. Because right now, like, and there is quite a bit of sentence variety, but there's definitely some stretches, like kind of where your cursor is, where most of the sentences are pretty long. And then, and so I think just kind of
this is all technically one sentence.
Yeah, which I mean, it's not necessarily a run-on sentence, so to speak.
No.
But it's definitely something that it can, if you had like broken up the sentences a little bit more, it could give the story a little bit more rhythm. As well as some of the paragraphs are all kind of the same size. And this is something that I struggle with a lot. Is that I'll finish writing a chapter and I'll go back and I'll be like, wow, every single one of my paragraphs are the exact same size.
Yeah. This is...
And so
Oh, sorry, please continue.
Okay, yeah, no, I was just gonna say that's just something to keep an eye out for. It's not necessarily inherently bad, but it can get a little bit repetitive over time. So that's just what I was gonna say.
Yeah, this is something where, like, I've seen this. I've seen this with a lot of people. I've seen this especially in my own early writing, that paragraphs can become very formulaic.
Yeah.
Like in terms of like how many sentences you put in, what exactly you've got to address, and that's something that like school drills into us. Creative writing takes a lot of those rules and throws them out the window or bends them and breaks them. But random person, like, I love what you did with my advice about adding in a little bit more action to help liven this up. You did really, really well. You brought a whole lot more to Theodore. Like, I feel like I know this guy a little bit better. Like this is a guy that I could expect to run into on the street. And as you describe more about like what he's wearing, like how his face is drawn and everything, like I can picture him really well in my mind's eye. We got the atmosphere is on point. The main problem is thrown at us. The pacing was just right for a good horror story. Whether this is like a short story or just the beginning of a longer horror story, this landed just right. Like it's ticking all the boxes for what a strong opening needs. I'll be honest, if someone is reading this and they aren't hooked, they either don't like horror stories or they weren't paying attention.
I was gonna say
honestly.
Yeah, I was gonna say the atmosphere is very well handled. It does a great job of kind of building some suspense as well as like kind of giving you a dark mood without it feeling depressing, which is not an easy thing to do. So props to you.
Yeah, like you took the mundanity of work. Like reading this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been here. I know what that's like, and how you transition from the mundane to the horrific, and how it just escalates. The escalation was really good. It didn't just come and slap me over the side of the head. It built up to it. From the weird warbliness of his reflection to the guy that he saw who looked wrong. He's like, nope, that's a good person. That's normal. I'm hearing weird things in my house. That's normal. There's a silhouette in my house. That is not normal. And then it just builds from there. Like that was really good, ratcheting it up until you were ready to then just start hitting with the spookiness. So that was good. As Nate brought up, like basically the things that need to be done here are cosmetics, spelling, grammar, sentence structure. That's pretty much it. The word
which
choice,
is most.
I liked a lot of the word choice.
Yeah, you can go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I was just gonna say I really liked a lot of the word choice. Like you will this is where like when you've edited this and you then hand it over to other beta readers will then let you know what words you might have leaned on a little too much, where the repetitiveness might be shifted around a little bit if there is any left over once you've edited this thing once or twice. But really, it is just cosmetics. Like this is hitting the story. This is good. If you were to I'll be honest, if I handed this on over to an editor who was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and wasn't feeling absolutely down that day and on their 5th cup of coffee, they'd probably really like reading this and might be interested in reading the rest of your manuscript. And if the rest of it's as good as this, they might be willing to take you on as an author. I feel confident in saying that.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like most of the issues that I outlined, not even issues, but most of the things that we outlined earlier are all things that an editor would be able to help you with. It's just nothing. There's no issues that I read with your word choice or with your story. And it's all just, basic, editing, not basic editing, but it's like stuff that an editor would help work through, And so I think that you've got a really, really solid start here.
Yeah. Let's see here. Let me catch up with oh yeah, coming back to liminal spaces. Right? So I love the liminal aspect at the end, as well as the normality that was disturbed by mysterious events. I agree. I really, really like that. And I'm glad that I could work with you on this before you submitted it, because what you gave to me was interesting. That was like the good bones bit, and you built on that and fleshed it out like fantastically. So Draj says, I thought this was mid at best. Here's the thing, Draj. We are always our biggest critics, and we're always going to be the harshest people. Like, this wasn't all that great. And there will be other people who might say, oh, this is mid, compared to other stuff I've read, but for what you have delivered to us as a novice author, this has gone through just a little bit of editing, not too much. With what we've read right here, this is good. This is good. And anyone who says that it isn't any good, again, either that means that they don't like horror or they weren't paying attention.
I always say this is something that I wrote in one of my books, is that creativity never feels creative to the creator.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's partially because you were in your brain all day long. You just take it for granted. And it's not until somebody else sees what is going on inside your brain do you really get to see the true potential of your creativity.
Yeah. But quickly catching up with some of the stuff that that was posted right here. Art says, I feel like I got my best feedback in my community college writing course when we could all read aloud or our made up on the spot short stories. Yeah, putting people on the spot can definitely help out with that. Fun fact, there is a dragon in my story, kind of. But my lore expands a lot from what you've seen, so this is extremely reassuring that you liked it. Well, I'm glad that we can reassure you and encourage you there, ISO. All right. So then let's then get to the next one. So we've been on here now. I gotta make my next note. So we still got 3 more submissions. Let me share my screen once again to the eternal swirl, and hopping on over. All right, so here we go. David Harlow's story, and with the current working title of Project Guardcharm. Make my little note right here about the time. There we go. Author's disclaimer. This is supposed to be for the design of a game with its own story. As such, the formatting will be handled accordingly. This also involves a part where I haven't worked out the finer details, but gotta try, right? At least as long as the gist is provided, that's what's important. As I would need help really getting the entire project going, especially when it comes to working out details. I am open to using DMs for providing already decided details as needs be. So, to David Harlow, I believe, as we know him, as we know him here, DH Knight. So I will already say this: I did not copy over everything that you wrote. My reason for that is because, as you know very well, your story begins to split off based on the different choices that you make, which is really cool that you're already thinking about where all these different choices go in this choose your own adventure story. Excuse me. And I think that that's really, really good. So when I was reading through it, I was like, okay, then. I didn't like the entire story rather than one particular storyline. So I read up to a certain point and I said, right here, I'm going to cut off, because I think right here where we cut off, we can already start talking about how your beginning feels, how strong it is, what might need to be worked on, without getting people lost. Because the further that we go into this, as your choices continue to have more of an impact, I feel like it's very easy for people to get lost if we go too far. So I only took your beginning up to a certain point. So I hope you understand that. But what I hope is that with what we have right here, that will already give us enough to move forward with.
Hey, Lars, real fast. My phone's about to die, so I'm gonna hop off and rejoin on my laptop. So
Okay.
Go ahead and read this, but when you're done reading it, just re-invite me or like re-bring me into the live stream.
All right, will do.
Okay, I'll see you in a bit.
See you in a bit. All right, here we go. Knights. They are mighty combatants, directly honored by the king, given the power to take what they want and draw girls into supporting them and marrying them. POV of a man sitting down, watching as some people are repairing damaged houses. Baby girl can be heard saying "dada" from off screen in concern toward the man. Man, don't worry, you ankle biter. Your dad just needs a moment to rest. Shifts his left arm to place a wizard staff along his stomach, drowsy. Then it's back to helping your mom with POV eye slow closure. POV eye slow opening. Now 11-year-old boy is the perspective character waking from a bed in a castle's soldier quarters. Boy, I guess I want that so much. Boy narrating. My name is Saul Floquez. Or Floquez. I don't know if exactly it's supposed to be French. I'll say Floquez. My name is Saul Floquez. I am 11 years old, native to the land of Nilecorfa, and I am wanting to one day have a wife. Aren't we all? That would be fun, which I have recently learned that us boys want our fun and girls want marriage and stability. Equal trade, huh? Sounds simple enough, but there's one problem I have to worry about. Chapter 1. The Water Knight's Birth. Door bursts open and... Soldier panicked. Bandits are attacking! Waking person 1. What? Where's Kellifer Castle? They wouldn't... what? Here? In Kellifer Castle? They wouldn't dare! Waking person 2. Not to worry. The Pink Knights are the best Nilecorfa has to offer. They will suppress their pointless attack. Saul thinking. If a group is attacking here in Nilecorfa's capital, something must be encouraging them. Whoever these Pink Knights are, they couldn't be an effective deterrent. Smiling to himself, maybe I can do something. Talking. I'm heading out. Waking person. What? But, Saul, was it? This is your first day. Saul. A day I would not want to waste. Not if I can do something. Exits quarters, quickly seeing a group of women warriors in pink upon reaching a hallway with 3 entry points, thinking, these must be Warrior Woman 1. Do you think they'll come from the center? Woman Warrior 2. Too obvious. Right is too long. Though if we cover the left, Saul. You leave the castle open to ambush from the center. Women Warrior suddenly looked to Saul in shock. Women Warrior, Pink Knight 2. You think you impress anybody, boy? At least all of us, the Pink Knights? Pink Knight 1. Yeah. We can see you're some gross creep. Nothing like Sir Magna Beanhest. Or Sir Depris Sebru. Serbu, not Sebru. Serbu. No girl in her right mind would ever like you. I'm only 11. Shut up. Pink Knight 3. We have no time for you. We are heading out for glory. Young Pink Knight, looking to be about 13 years old. I think I'm hearing battle sounds from the center. Maybe we should. Pink Knight 1. You are a Pink Knight. You are to help us show the worth of women everywhere. If this upstart who thinks he is anything like that good lad Kelbim Solisol is worth anything, he will show it here on his own. 13-year-old Pink Knight. If you say so. Pink Knights quickly move along the left path, and just after they do, a group of bandits come in from the center path, ready their bows and prepare to shoot at Saul. But the center path is suddenly barricaded by makeshift material shifted by a magic spell. An armored bandit slips past the barricade. Male voice, strong but not rough. Dang, missed one. Need to fix that. Chants a spell that immobilizes the bandit. That wouldn't hold him forever. Lad, weaken him so I can capture him. Saul. Sure thing. Gameplay starts allowing the player to control Saul directly in first-person view, and the male voice owner turns out to be the man who wears a contemplating expression and is somewhat close to neotenic. Saul is designated to attack the immobilized bandit, but may talk to the contemplating man first. Contemplating man. Guy's scary, isn't he? With his armor. You may want to throw out a few stronger attacks to speed things along, but please be wary if you do that. Upon Saul dealing enough damage to the bandit, the contemplating man throws out the spell that puts the bandit in chains, taking the bandit out of action. Contemplating man, I trust you have paid attention. Hard to remember it may be, what with them wanting to kill us, But our enemies are still living beings, and taking them alive is preferable. The spell I use now will let you defeat them non-fatally. Just weaken them first so they can't break free. Another bandit armed with bow and arrow comes in from the right path. Bow and arrow bandit, a boy. At least you have food on the table, and you want to get in our way. You ain't a child. You're one of Nalikorfa's stooges. You will not rob me of my life. Bow and arrow starts attacking Saul. If talking to the contemplating man again, contemplating man, this one seems smarter than his buddies and will probably reposition well if you approach. Just don't panic. If you can find ways to weather his arrows and suddenly get close, I doubt he will prove tough without his distance edge. Gameplay paused upon bow and arrow bandits' defeat either by fatal damage or by full capture. If Saul fatally hurts the bow and arrow bandits, so this, what they call fate, falls over, becomes still. Saul, I'm sorry, contemplating man. I wish apologies could let you take his early demise back. But I suppose it couldn't be helped with how troublesome he must have been. Still, in the future, others frustrated with the ways of things could believe us to be a problem, or possibly be forced to fight us. We must not forget that. If Saul captures the bow and arrow bandit, ugh, you want me at the mercy of your fellow cheats? Saul, these fellow cheats don't like me to begin with. I simply don't want you dead. Contemplating man, solid. You have a handle. Contemplating man, solid. You have a handle on things. Just remember to not get complacent over kicking a few zessets. After either scenario, contemplating man, excuse me, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Conrad Leocour. Saul Floquez. Conrad, nice to meet you, Saul. You seem to have the potential to be a mighty adept. A shame those snobby mercenaries weren't at their post to protect the vulnerable. I think adepts would care not about any capabilities of theirs at this point. Saul, adept? As in a better magic user? Conrad, a more proficient one, yes. At any rate, I can tell that you want to press on. In that case, I ask that you pace yourself. That bandit was using a detour, so resistance is likely lighter and would make for great practice. I'll stand guard over the center path. You saw it is very unsafe, though I confess myself seeing the possibility that you could manage to break through. Understand your options so that you can make the most of them. Saul, understood, Sir Conrad. Gameplay resumes. The player is designated to follow the right path, but the center path would be available by usage of a spell the player can theoretically cast on any playthrough, but won't know how to cast the spell without either previously memorizing a spell encyclopedia within their how to play resources, or naturally remembering the spell after learning it significantly later. The center path would involve enemies who are not meant to be challenged by beginners, but would be a faster route to the next story checkpoint. This is intended to be a veteran quick study bonus, allowing any player who has a handle on the game's control design. More of that soon enough. To handle this level a decent bit faster on a new life. All right. So I stopped it right there because, again, I feel like once we start going a little bit further, we're just going to get into way more into the weeds of this particular game and its gameplay. It's good, and I think like if you and DH Knight, if you want to share with even more people what you've so far come up with, I think that this is really good. I think that this is also like right off the bat, because this is a video game and you're basically playing out the different possibilities right here of like what would a veteran player do, or someone who's very ambitious, who's memorized the how to, or just for the first time beginner who's just going to follow what the game tells them to do and enjoy the story that way. With all of your different options and with what you've set up, say an immediate bit of advice that I would throw out there is that you'll want to talk with other people who have designed dialogue, specifically like dialogue for comics, dialogue for shows, dialogue for video games, and get what they might have to say as far as like the back and forth banter between Saul and Conrad, having this kind of a conversation, especially because you want to do this for the first person perspective, and this isn't like zoomed out Deltarune Undertale style gaming. The exchange between them, for me, doesn't quite fit an attack on the castle, at least in a first person perspective kind of a way. It's good to have this, and I think actually like a really interesting thing that you could do to like have like a continual conversation going back and forth between Conrad and Saul, because I feel like there's great potential here. What I would do now, I bring in Nate again for this.
I'm back.
Nate is back. What I would do, since you've got magic, and I'm not sure how breaking of the world this is, but if Conrad says, "Hey, I've got a spell that will allow us to communicate over like a short distance. I'll be a bug in your ear, but like I think I might be able to help you out in order to survive because you're such a young boy, but we need every defender." If you have that, then you can have Saul then move on and then do the whole like tutorial part as he goes around the long way rather than going through the main point of action. And you can then have Conrad say stuff in his ear that gives the player the information that they need about spells and about dealing with different characters. So that way you've got that for the whole tutorial bit. And I think that might work a little bit better going forward. But that's just the most immediate thing that pops out to me while reading through this.
Yeah, I was
Master Knight DH says it's supposed to be Latin. Okay, got it. And I am horrible with Latin. Sorry, Nate, I cut you off.
No, that's okay. I was gonna say I really, really enjoyed the dialogue, and I understand that this is, gonna be a video game, so I would like to know just a little bit more about the detail of the characters, just to be able to put, like a mental image to the people who are saying this. That being said, though, I think that this dialogue is very fun, but I can see what you're saying, Lars, where it might not be as fun as a like almost pseudo cutscene style of banter, but rather like I could see it working very well as like you can hear the banter as you're playing along, and they're just kind of there to following you on your adventure, and you're like hearing this banter through this spell. That might be a really fun idea. It kind of reminds me, your suggestion, Lars, kind of reminds me of like God of War, when at least the 2018 and God of War Ragnarok, where like the characters will kind of chat and banter and kind of make jokes and have fun while you're going through the world, which really like that livens up the gameplay a lot to have that, like it makes it feel less lonely. And so I think that could be a really unique way to do that, for sure.
Yeah. And as far as like addressing the what I'd be looking for in the like in the story, or I say what I'm looking for in the beginning. So again, sharing my screen. We're going back to the swirl. Back over here to the swirl. So as far as like the action of the like the action sense and who Saul is, so like so like the pacing is there, and I do like the pacing. We've got our introduction to Saul. I agree with Nate. Like it would be good, at least like from a writer's perspective, like in order to like communicate to the people that you're working with to make this game happen. It'd be good to have a description of what Saul looks like, of what the environment looks like, and so forth. We get the dialogue. Dialogue is really good. As I said, the pacing is good. You've already introduced to us basically what the main goal is, hence the main conflict of the game in general, like right off the bat. And so the one thing is that when here at the beginning, so this little bit right here, from the vision that Saul has, or the dream that Saul has, to then him introducing himself right before the door bursts open, and I would actually like to see more. I would like to see more of this dream scenario that Saul has in mind. Convince me that that I want to be a knight who wins the attention of the ladies and gets married to the gal of my dreams. I mean, I'm already prone for that, but as far as like getting into the game, I think that this could be a little bit stronger with expanding a little bit more, giving us some more details and insights, which can be conveyed through the dream that he has. Because once we then start jumping on over into the action, and we get Saul doing stuff, and then Saul meeting up with Conrad, all of that's good. That flows really well. But I want to be sold on what Saul is sold on. Otherwise, I think it's almost even better just to be introduced to the action with nothing about this. And be all like, okay, things are happening. Holy crap, I gotta survive. And then after Saul has survived, you're like, oh, Saul's got a dream? Oh, and you're beginning to discover stuff about him after the fact. So either you make that opening dream sequence longer and more detailed, sell us on what Saul's dream is, or you hold that back to then give us the reason as to why Saul went through all that effort and why he's going to continue through the story. That would be my big suggestion as far as structuring this goes. So I don't know. Whoop. Hop back to the eternal to the eternal swirl right there for a moment. Any other thoughts, Nate?
No, I think you covered just about everything.
Yeah.
All in all, I really enjoyed the dialogue. I thought it was very fun.
Yeah. Yeah, give us more. Yeah, I would love to have more dialogue between Saul and Sir Conrad. And looking forward to reading through even more about the story as it continues to progress from that point. So, let me quickly hop back on over to here to see if there's anything that I missed. Shade is here. Great to have you here, Shade. So, nope. Then, let us then go on over to our next submission. So I'm going to share the screen yet again. We're going to go back to the Eternal Swirl. And boom. Okay, then. So here we have Mojotale, the working title for Hana Heaven's Story. So I ripped this right out of I ripped the prologue that you wrote, Hana, right off of the document that you shared with us. And actually, I think I'm just going to pop on over there because the way I tore it does not play well with my eyes. So I'm just going to hop on over here. All right, then. So, Mojotale. Undertale fan comic prologue. A dark, empty void. A disembodied voice narrates. There show a glowing sparkle. Narrator. In the annals of the cosmos, where existence flickers like a distant star, we find ourselves at the crossroads of destiny. Just real quick point right here. I love that we have Annals of the Cosmos. I had a professor who, when I wrote this, was all like, annals? I'm like, no, annals. And she's like, is that a real word? I'm like, it is.
A professor yes, this is a real didn't know. That's silly.
It's not anal. It's annals. The repositories of remembrance of history. Anyways, In the annals of the cosmos, where existence flickers like a distant star, we find ourselves at the crossroads of destiny. Now transformed into a red-shaped heart, its surface glowing with a faint light. Narrator. A heart filled with an unwavering resolve that defies the currents of time and space. In a deep, echoing voice. Fate! A word whispered through the ages. A force that molds every soul, every life, a tapestry woven with the threads of destiny, each stitch a choice, a consequence. A close-up of the figure's hand holding the glowing red heart. Narrator. Some believe it's unyielding, a path carved in stone. Others see it as a river flowing towards a predetermined end. Let me tell you a story about a human child who fell from the sky, a soul of innocence in the depths of the underground, small, lost, but a bit spirited. A close-up of a young hand gripping a rusty knife, the child's face hidden by the shadow of a large, menacing monster. Narration. They faced darkness with a light in the heart, in a world consumed by fear and prejudice. A montage of scenes of Frisk facing dangers in the underground. Narration. The child befriends monsters, sharing laughter and tears, helping them show the path of hope and dreams. They forged a bond of understanding, a peace between two worlds forever divided. Such a happy ending, right? However, something feels off. It feels hollow. I see you wish to discover more. Well, then I guess we both have something in common. Just be warned. Once you make a deal, there's a price you have to pay. Exit Ocean Coast Guard boat. It's night. Fade in. A wide shot of the vast ocean at night. The full moon hangs high in the sky, casting a silvery glow on the rippling water. A large Coast Guard boat cuts through the wave, its searchlight illuminating a narrow path ahead. A close-up on the bridge of the Coast Guard boat. A crewman, slumped over the wheels, snores softly. He's wearing a uniform with a worn-out life vest strapped over it. Coast Guard, snoring. There's a strange fog cover around the sea. A red light blinks on the console, accompanied by a loud, insistent beep, beep, beep. The crewman jumps awake, startled. Coast Guard, startled. Ah! A close-up on the crewman's face, his eyes wide with alarm as he stares at the console. Sonar ping of a dot moving closer to something. Coast Guard. Something down there? A split screen. The top panel shows the crewman, eyes glued to the sonar reading. The bottom panel's a close-up of the water below the boat, where a shadowy, enormous form is lurking in the depths. The water around it ripples with unnatural energy. Coast Guard. Ah! A wide shot of the Coast Guard boat, the shadowy form now clearly a monstrous sea creature that looks like a hybrid of a shark and a killer whale the size of tree trunks, bursts from the water. It crashes onto the deck, its gaping maw filled with razor-sharp teeth. The crewman screams in terror. The Sea Coast Guard starts to send the alarm. Woo! A bunch of their crewmen woke up from their beds and quickly got dressed and brought their gears and weapons. The leader of the crew led the others to stop the sea creature. Coast Guard leader. Bring in the nets! The crew caught the sea monster. Coast Guard leader. Slow and steady. The sea monster trying so hard to rip the net with their teeth. The sea monster trying to swim sharply away from the rope. Sudden, the net that is attached to the hook is almost about to break. Coast Guard leader, shocked. Ah! The monster yanks the hook out, causing the boat to shake. The sea monster spins around the ship super fast to create a water whirlwind attack, making the boat unstable. The crew is screaming while holding onto something, onto dear life. The leader brings out their walkie-talkie and calls in one of the divers. Coast Guard leader, Sam, start the engine. The crewman looked froze in fear. Coast Guard leader, Sam, now. The crewman quickly starts pressing buttons and turns on switches. Coast Guard leader, that's it. Now get this junk flying. The boat starts quickly turning the ship away. The monster rushes and almost about to attack the boat, but before it gets worse, a bunch of energy blue spears almost attack the monster. Sea monster, roar! We see a shadow figure stand at the top of the ship, holding a blue energy spear. Undyne, I don't know what your deal is, but you're trespassing on this territory. Give in, or it's going to be rough. The sea monster creates a water magic that shoots a blast of high-pressure water out of their mouth, almost breaking the ship in half. Undyne creates summoning blue and yellow spears and throws them at the sea monster. The sea monster retreats from the ocean, its tail disappearing into the darkness of the ocean. One of the crewmen showing a sign of relief and congrats Undyne for scaring off the sea monster. Leader crewman, looks like it's gone for now. We better report this. The leader calls in the new crew to head back to their stations. Close-up shot of Undyne looking down into the ocean, looking seriously concerned. Undyne is silent. All right, so there we have the opening to Mojotale. So obviously, this is a fan's continuation of Undertale. So if you know Undertale, you then know Undyne. You know the power of her amazing spears, and this is clearly after the monsters have reached the top side of the world, and are now with the humans. But it seems as though things are amiss. Say we've been introduced to an important character. The opening with the narration really introduces us in a vague way to the main conflict, a continuation of Undertale's story, because something about the ending feels hollow, like there's more still to be discovered. And so this is just the beginning. And to connect us definitely to Undertale, so we know what it is, we get to meet Undyne. And so the pacing, I think works well. This is a fun continuation of Undertale. Again, you kind of got to have played Undertale and know the characters there, I think, to really feel at ease in this particular story. Otherwise, this is a very confusing prologue just for its material. But again, the pacing works well. I feel like a good mysterious atmosphere has been set. We'll have to see if that holds throughout the rest of the story. Basically, corrections that need to be done here are just cosmetic as far as grammar and a little bit of spelling goes. But otherwise, I feel like, and this is definitely written more like a traditional script right here.
Yeah.
And
I was going to say, I really like how much detail you went into describing the scenes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Even down to giving us a very specific camera angles.
Yeah.
Which is good.
But I really enjoyed this. One thing that I would do, and this is more so just because I have dyslexia, I would probably pick a slightly lighter shade of green for the background of the paper. The contrast is not really like the contrast could be a little bit better, just for legibility purposes. And so other than that, I mean, that's really the only thing that I would fix. I never played Undertale, so I'm not totally sure about like the content of what this is tackling. So I can't really say much there, but from like a from a perspective of like how it was written and what it says, I really quite enjoyed it. So
Yeah, and I'm actually hold on a sec here, real quick, because um, Hannah did provide us with some images as well, and I want to make sure that we have the chance to quickly show that stuff off as well. So it'll take just a moment, and I will then have that ready to go. Because I first described like a video game or a show, but ultimately this is meant to be a comic. Which understanding camera angles is also really good for doing comic art. Say that's a vernacular that shifts over pretty well.
Yeah, I looking at the comments, Hannah said it might explain why I have a hard time writing the color of the paper. And actually, the probably one of the main reasons why I notice it in the first place is because for my job, I'm a programmer, but our site is oftentimes used for like it's used in like some government settings, and in order for it, because basically for any government website there has to be a very strict like accessibility guidelines behind it, and one of the guidelines is that all text has to be a certain percentage of contrast, and so it's something that I'm actually now hyper aware of. And so actually, there's a really good website. I don't remember what the website is called, but it's just like I usually just get it through Contrast Checker. I'm gonna Google it real fast. Web AIM, Web Accessibility in Mind. That's the website, but it literally just has a color contrast checker, and it just tells you like if that color is like if it passes accessibility guidelines, and so highly recommend if you do feel like you're having a hard time writing it, that's probably why. So I would definitely recommend making sure that the contrast of the text is high enough. That's part of the reason why this is kind of a controversial statement. That's part of the reason why I don't love typing on like a in dark mode. Like I love dark mode on my phone, but I don't really like typing on a dark mode screen. Because I actually feel like it just strains my eyes more, especially if I'm in a bright room. But that's also something as a programmer, as a arts major, as a user interface designer, am ultra aware of that most people aren't. So, can you show me the link? If not, yes. Let me get the link. So if you're doing anything visually, especially with text involved, I would definitely recommend making sure that your contrast is legible. So there you go. I think okay. The should have sent that over. Hopefully you can see that. I don't know if you can. I shared the link.
Let me quickly check, see if it came through. Because sometimes YouTube blocks links unless it's sent directly from the person streaming.
Oh, gotcha.
What's the name of the site?
Here, I can post it in the StreamYard.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Let me then quickly grab that. And
which, I mean, I guess that makes sense to stop from spamming.
Yeah. So let's see here. This should go through.
There it is.
Yep. There we go.
Yep, that's the one.
Yeah. So Hannah, if you want to check that out, there's a resource for you.
Yeah, so you just plug in the colors, and it tells you if the colors are, if the contrast is accessible. Just a little side tangent there.
That's an excellent resource to have.
Yeah, but I love this artwork. It's fun. I love the
Yeah.
personality.
Say we got more right here. You got an OC for this work. Moria.
Was this one that Zaza drew?
Yes, Zaza drew
Okay.
Moria.
That's what I thought I looked familiar. I love that.
Yep. Yeah, man. We gotta bring Zaza back onto here for more drawings and conversations. There's so much fun to have.
Oh, fun. I love this emotion.
Mm-hmm.
I love how expressive the eyes are.
Yeah, the eyes are expressive. I like the cute body language.
Yeah.
And here's the last of the images that Hana shared with us. Marcia Voss. So yeah, well done, Hana. And and I look forward to seeing how you start putting this all together as a comic. So it was a fun event drawing challenge. I did. It was fun. Awesome. And for all the rest of you who are on our stream who also come up with your own artwork for your characters and for your stories. If you're on our Discord, please feel free to share that artwork with us. We love seeing it. I, as the horrible artist that I am, I just stick to written words.
There's honestly, there's something so like, something so simple about your artwork. Whenever I see it, it's like, I don't know. Lars, I actually really like when you do draw something, because I think it's like, it's simplistic, and it's like, I don't know how to explain it. I actually really like when you share it. So feel free to always draw.
All right. I tried doing the PewDiePie drawing challenge. I did not do so hot. But that's because I eat up my days with too much other stuff. That if I want to sit down and actually draw, you got to make sure that you're dedicating time to that. Otherwise, that event does not just do itself. Nope, not at all.
Or you could be like me and hyperfixate on it for like 2-3 years and then never pick up a pen and pencil again.
No, no, you got great artwork.
Well, thank you. I know I would love to get back into drawing. But that hyperfixation has sailed, and hopefully it'll swing back around at some point. But as it stands, I'm oh, sorry, my microphone was under my beard. Hopefully you can still hear me talking.
I think I got you just fine.
Okay. Yeah. Anywho's, was that our last one, or do we have another one?
We got one more if we are willing to do it, because this one's mine. We've gone through the ones that everyone else has submitted, and if we've got the time and we want to do it, we can do mine. Mine's the chonker.
Oh,
that's
boy,
what
a chonker.
of me.
As expected. Right on brand.
Right on brand. So let you guys let us know in the chat if you want me to read through the beginning of a book that I wrote, brand new first draft. So it'll have all the first draft problems that one could expect. But whether or not we do read it, I just want to take a moment again to thank right here, ImmOmega, Arts 1984, ISO, Random Person, David Harlow or DH Knight, and Hannah Heaven for sharing your awesome work with us. Like, this was fun, and it made me so happy to see that we had multiple people submit their stories in all their different forms and variety. And one of the things that I hope that this has shown you is not just only how you can improve your writing, but that it's shown to you that you can do it. You can create something, which is one of the biggest problems with starting a story, is getting over that hurdle of just starting in the first place. You guys have started, which is incredible. And I hope that this also shows to other people that they can do it. This is possible. And on top of that, sharing your work again in a public setting, whether that be in a public forum here on YouTube, or even to a closed Discord like Camille's Harem, that is a big deal. It takes a lot of courage, and you guys did it, which should not be understated.
Yeah, no, not at all. It's scary, and it's one of the hardest things to do, but there's also something so freeing and liberating about putting something out there, you know. I mean, obviously it's now in the public domain, and the public isn't always the nicest, especially when hiding behind a keyboard. But I'm very proud of everybody's work so far. They've all been great beginnings. Now, the hard part from here on out is to not obsess over the beginning and keep changing it every time you go to sit down to write. But rather to finish your book and then come back to the beginning and fix it. Because if you fix your beginning every time you find something wrong with it, you're never going to get through the rest of your story.
Yeah. Like I want to see DH Knight just continue, for instance, just continue on with writing. Like, I gave you my ideas on the beginning, but honestly, just continue pressing forward with your game, with the story, with what you want to do with Saul. Keep on going, because once you get all of it out, you will know even better than I do what your beginning will need to make it the best possible.
Exactly.
And I'm looking forward to more installments for I'm Human from Arts. I'm so excited that we finally got to see some writing from ISO. I'm really excited to see where he goes from there with the story, because we've been hearing again bits and pieces of it now for a long time. It's great to finally see it, coming together, and I want to read the rest of the story.
As do I.
Yes, please we'll have to somehow do a follow up in the future and see how people have been doing. And one of the easy ways that you guys can share with us at least follow up stuff is if you're over at our Discord channel. Which if you haven't already joined, let us know in the comments to this or any of our videos that you want to join. We'll have a brief interview with you, then give you the link to get on in, and it'll be grand. So as Jiraj says right here, as he says, you're asking if we would say anything aside from yes, as if we would say anything aside from yes. I mean, we can if we want. If we want to dive into the chonker, and I can introduce you guys to Gear Witch. What do you say?
I say sure. I was going to say if we want a shorter beginning, we could potentially read something of mine. I don't really have... I mean, I shared something a while ago, but I have my wild cards opening that we could dive into if we want something a little bit shorter. But that's also not really... I mean, it's a a first draft. I already know exactly how I want to fix it and change it. And so I don't know necessarily if that would be useful or if reading through Gear Witch would be useful for people. But I definitely think we should just do one rather than both.
Yeah.
And so I'm fine with one or the other, or even calling it here, because this is already 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So
Jiraiya just basically said yes, but again, because this is participatory, we want to hear from the rest of you what you guys think. Should we just call it right here? Do you want to hear wild cards, or do you want to hear Gear Witch? We won't do both because then we'll be going pretty late. So we'll wait to get some inputs, and in the meantime, I'll just pull this back on up again. As I was telling people at the beginning, Nate, I'm going to try to do my revenge run of Elden Ring before the next installment comes out in May, where they'll do Night Rain. Like, now that I've finished it and I have finished that time I married a goddess, my little spoofy isekai thing that I've been working on for like a year now.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? Okay. Like I've made it through Elden Ring, and now that I'm effectively a god, like I want to get revenge on all these suckers who gave me grief for months of playing the game.
I haven't. I need to dive into the DLC. I haven't touched it yet.
The DLC is nuts.
I'll tell you this.
I'll tell you this. Watch or read up on some tutorials before going into it, especially for the story aspect, because I just was all like, because I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do any tutorials this time. Like, let me just go through this, and and I just played through, not paying it any attention, and I screwed up so much of the story. I'm like, oh no. So I'm like, dang it. All right, next time I am looking through the entire the entire guide on the story aspect, because if you do that, then you can get the most out of all the side characters, because the side characters are kind of necessary for some of the boss fights. And I have one boss fight where I'm all like, I don't have the side character. Oh no, I'm so screwed. So yeah. So in the revenge tour, I will do better. Isa says, I remember some very helpful advice you once gave me, Lars. It was for Shadowbound, and you asked a few amazing questions that helped shape the story as it is now. Fantastic. All right, sorry guys, been jumping between this stream and another. Don't worry, I don't mind if you're cheating on us.
Lars is a very open relationship with his viewers.
Yes. I am not possessive. Well, other than Jiraiya saying yes, I'm not seeing any other yeses or any other nos. So, I mean, let's see. I'm feeling like reading my bit there, but reading from my story, Nate. But again, as you said, like, we've been going on now for over 2 hours and 40 minutes. So I don't know how you're feeling with good old pizza now resting in the belly.
Oh, the pizza is definitely rested. So, I mean, I'm good. I'm cool with you if you want to read it, for sure.
Okay. Then Art says the stories I've seen are good. Oh, fantastic. All right. So I will share, and then hopefully you guys will give me feedback on what you think of my story. So let me just make sure I have it lined up right here. And one more time, the screen share to the infinite swirl. Infinite swirl time. And here we go. All right. Moko waved after her friends as they vanished into the sky, gone in a flash of fire that roared up past the rings and chased the bloody comet lighting up the night. In her other hand, she clutched the Infinite Codex, her grandfather's greatest work, clutched tightly in the other hand. Hiromu Ken lay dead at her feet, blood still spilling across the polished white marble floor. The bane of all free gear witches was dead at last. You gotta admit, Seam, that was a great adventure. Moku let out a whoop and waved even more fiercely through the hole in the crumbling roof. I personally wouldn't count this ill-advised adventure completed until we are far out of the city, her hat griped. Holding up the codex, Moku beamed triumphantly. Nothing can stop us now. Hidomu's dead, grandfather's masterpiece is back where it belongs, and there's no one left in the Iron Ring but you and me. Care to go shopping? Dozens of stolen inventions of the world's greatest gear witches were ripe for the taking. Hidomu Ken was a man who despised Moku's people, but lusted after their abilities. He had made it his life's mission to collect their greatest treasures while ruining the life of every gear witch who didn't swear the lives to the angels. His torture cells were just as much a part of his morbid collection as the Infinite Codex had been. Seam gave her an irritated slap with his wide brim. The city guard will be on us in a moment. There's no way they didn't hear you hooligans blast off half the roof. Jammed gears, but you're right, she conceded. The city guard would take her head and return her grandfather's codex to its cage if they caught Moku right in the heart of the crime. Moku quickly glanced around. Her staff remained dutifully standing by her side, waiting to be commanded or snatched up. Hidomu was going cold along with all the other fallen guards in the vicinity. In the distance, fire bells began ringing. Seam was right. It was time to fly. She quickly checked her gear. Her strengthening gloves and boots were still working, the gears and rings silently whirling. She needed to replenish her explosives. Pulling her satchel out from behind her back and underneath her long coat, Moku cranked a gear at the mouth of the bag. Stash, she commanded. Opening its gaping mouth, the satchel revealed a perfectly black void. Moku deposited the Infinite Codex into a suspended space. Hurry, hurry, hurry! Seam urged. You're making me anxious! Moku replied in an annoyed, sing-songish voice. You know what they say. Anxious hands make horrible mistakes. Extract. Clicking the gear once again, the inside of her satchel changed. She ordered 3 more flash orbs, 2 page renders, and 2 fire bombs. A grimace pulled her face as Moku noted how low she was on resources. She couldn't afford to get caught in another fight. Securing the explosives along her belts, the witch commanded, Goggles. Here you go, Seam replied. His fabric wriggled and deposited a pair of thick goggles atop her head. Moku reached up and pulled them down, securing them on her face and pulling the strap to a comfortable position before tightening it. Locking her satchel and spinning it back, she gave the dead curator a final kick and grabbed her staff. Hold tight, Seam. Ready for more bad decisions, the hat grumbled, tightening himself atop her. And gripping her staff, Moku said, Spring! With a loud boing, a spring built into her staff propelled her straight up through the gap in the roof. Seam and Moku's long coat flapped in the wind as she broke out into the night sky. She flicked a small switch at the side of her goggles and activated them. The world took on a new form as everything lit up like the day. On top of that, she could now see the graced auras roaming the city. 3 wraiths exiting the temple, half a mile back, Seam warned in her head. With the wind ripping past them, it was far easier to communicate telepathically. Falling rings, Moku cursed. They're quick. Your friends just shatter the Tetsukan. Be ready for every member of the city's law enforcement to be after you. As Moku soared into a crest down to the roof of a nearby palace, she glanced back at the temples near up the hill. See, there you go. Ha ha ha. There's our first draft issues. In the distance were 3 black auras, just as Seam had said. A straight road connected the temple complexes up the hill to Hidomu's personal fortress. It would take them almost no time to catch up unless she went fast. Landing at a precarious angle, Moku rocketed further into the city, aiming southward. Another loud boing filled her ears as she jumped away from the scene of the crime. Other noises reached her, but without any devices to help her hear the impossible, it was all as garbled as the wind. Watching the street, she noticed the fiery red of at 3 wranglers. They were already converging on the iron ring. She hoped to fly over them and make good on her escape. In the distance, there was a couple of faint green pinpricks marking her fellow gear witches. Only in Kyokuyan City, she wasn't likely to find any allies among the other witches. The temples owned them. We should watch out for spark wielders, Seam warned. They would be fools to fire within the city, Moku retorted with a snort. They can't control where their lead lands. Right when she landed, the unmistakable pings of hot lead ringing off white marble, followed by small thunderclaps, heralded the arrival of Kyokuyan's elite guards. Though these spark wielders were stationed atop a distant palace roof and clearly out of accurate range, Moku wasn't going to tempt fate. I hate it when you're right. Just looking out for my creator. She swung off her staff and raced up the peaked rooftop before sliding down the other side. As Moku ran, she fumed. Remind me to invent a way to track spark powder. I don't think such a feat is possible. Don't tell me something's impossible while I'm trying to make a daring escape, she thought angrily. Breathing hard, her eyes swept the skyline, calculating the best route to escape her pursuers. Kyokuyan was made of white marble, with many magnificent structures closer to the temple complexes at the center of the city. It was as though all the aristocracy wished to be kings and queens. Sloping down to the imposing walls, the buildings became less grand, which meant that Moku would have less creative terrain to work with. She needed to get right up to the wall and stress her spring to clear the top. But first, she needed to survive the city patrols. Quick, I hear something! Gearwitch or Gate Warden? Someone shouted. Idiot! Wardens wouldn't be attacking the city in the middle of the night! If only you knew, Moku groused, hoping that the wraiths weren't able to track her over the rooftops. But then again, those inhuman monstrosities were gifted with far greater strength and speed than most humans, including the graced. Readying herself atop her staff, Moku whispered, Spring! She might as well have shouted her presence with all the ruckus her spring caused. But as the men below turned around and shouted, the Gear Witch was already in flight, far out of reach. She noticed the emerging auras of 2 more Wranglers and 3 written warriors with their blue auras lighting up the night. Things could turn ugly really fast. Focus on getting us out of here. I'll watch your back and sides, Seema reassured her. Thanks. Moku sprang from another slanted roof and kicked off a low tower, boasting a ridiculously ornate battlement. Windows were lighting up everywhere as the fire bells continued to toll their warnings. The commotion in the street let everyone know that the situation was even worse. What if Kyokuyan's nobles started sending out their own grace to deal with her? Sweat began beading on Moku's forehead. Cresting towards a much lower, less angled roof, Moko repositioned her staff. She was going to launch herself like an arrow and soar straight down the road. Doing so would be risky, but it would remove her from sight for a bit. That might lose anyone immediately tracking her and help throw the wraiths even more off her trail. The second she landed, Moku was deafened by a thunderous roar. Gah! I've got you, witch! Instinctually, she dropped and rolled. A Wrangler's massive hands whooshed right over Seam, nearly snagging him. Moku's hands ran along her staff, twisting and jerking the necessary gears into place. With an audible whirl, the metal staff became a magical bludgeon. It would hit with 10 times the force and weight of a usual strike. Crack! Moku's staff bounced off the thick armor encasing the Wrangler. A gauntleted hand brushed her staff to the side, putting her off balance. Adjusting the weight and force of her staff made it nearly unwieldy. Gears protruding from the Wrangler's suit began spinning, releasing sparks and smoke. Witch's magic. Before she could scramble out of his reach, the Wrangler caught her by the throat. The man slammed back his slotted visor to leer back at her. He wore a thick beard that cracked with a bright, toothy grin. His blue eyes sparkled with wild delight as he gloated. My armor enhances all of my movements. I can hold you with all the strength of a vice without crushing a dandelion like yourself. Don't fret, girl. You couldn't have outrun me, even if you tried. He kept blabbering on about his armor, constricting Moku's throat. She couldn't call for help, so instead she signaled telepathically. Seam, I need you to spit them all out. Blind him! Sam's mouth, a jagged rip above the wide brim, coughed a stream of greasy little metal bits. All the knickknacks Moku hoarded for little invention sprayed into his unsuspecting face. The Wrangler let out a cry of shock as he was halfway blinded. Moku reached up and pulled at his thumb, just as her brother had taught her long ago. With her enhancing gloves, she was just strong enough to counter the other witch's enhancements. All it took was 1 second. Moku kicked back and stumbled backwards. She recalled her staff and strained against its weight. The Wrangler roared and lunged after her. The bottom of her staff slammed into his chest, and she shouted, Spring! She rocketed backwards, barely slowing down the other man as her spring activated. Kicking against the low roof as it zipped past the gear witch, launched herself into a high somersault. Her hands worked fast to retract the staff's magical bludgeoning and aimed for another good jump. Other pursuers were already climbing up the nearby buildings, trying to surround her. The Wrangler slammed down his visor as he roared, That witch is mine! Nope, she corrected, pulling loose a flash orb. She tossed it right at the man and didn't look back. It ignited in a dazzling burst. Screams of pain followed panic confusion. Screams of pain followed panic confusion followed her. Too many follows in that sentence. A small fragment of her soul returned to her, like the embrace of an old friend. With her staff underneath her, Moku activated her spring once more and sailed away. The blue-eyed Wrangler in his fine suit gave chase, but blind as he was, he completely misjudged his leap. He went soaring right through the wall of a nearby tower. He vanished with an echoing crunch and crash. You cannot risk any more close encounters, Seam fretted. The wraiths are closing in. Looks like they've been pursuing at the same pace. Incredible. Noted, she growled. Her plan to fly under the skyline was a bust. All she could do was rely on speed. The grand and erratic buildings were coming to an end. Moko would soon drop into the regular business and residential districts. Once she was there, it would be a matter of speed. She scanned the horizon and spotted that a third gear witch was in the distance and already racing along the wall. Fortunately, they were off to the side. The route ahead was clear. To her immediate right was a different matter. She noticed the man flying directly at her just as Seam screamed the warning. The warm blue aura of a written warrior filled her goggles. Not skipping a beat, she slipped out a page render and held it ready. Her newest opponent angled to try and get ahead of her. White robes held in place with tasteful silver armor glinted in the light of the moon and rings. This written warrior was acting the part of a dramatic hero, more suited for the stage than a fight atop the city. Landing gracefully on a high mansion parallel her, Moku realized exactly what the man was waiting for. The second she landed, it would be easier for him to catch her, and there was nothing she could do to stop herself. Cords like snakes sprang from the air, itself to wrap the bandit up like a present. True to his magical words, heavy ropes appeared out of thin air and bound her up. She was completely enfolded and encased, as if she was a birthday present. Not activating her spring, Moko did her best to twist and roll across the roof. It was slanted and she began tumbling down. Gotcha! The man, written warrior bellowed triumphantly. Even though the cords muffled his voice, he shouted loud enough to wake up half the city. Don't worry, I won't handle you too roughly. The captains will appreciate your cooperation as well, so I suggest... Whoosh! Moku activated her page render. The metal orb was so close that it burned her hand as it activated. Another fragment of her soul returned as the ropes binding her shredded like old paper. The young man, probably only a year older than her, gaped down in utter shock and disbelief. He began mouthing a rebuke when Moko clobbered him aside his jaw. Leaping back on her feet, she flourished her staff and re-engaged the magical bludgeon. The poor written warrior was already so disoriented that he could not respond in time. He dropped with a nasty blow to his temple. "Hurry, hurry, hurry!" Seam and Moku said together as she wrenched away the man's book and a second book tucked away in the back of his belt. Written warriors were useless without their books. She tossed them into the dark as her staff leaped away with another loud boing. Glancing over her shoulder, Moku noticed the wraiths drawing closer. Their relentless pursuit was unnerving. They raced along and leaped over the rooftops and towers. Did nothing slow them down? "Keep your eyes on the road," Seam berated. "Remember, we cannot afford to get caught." "I know, I just need to..." Shattering rings. "We've got a gate warden on our tails!" A golden aura had emerged from one of the palace complexes. It was bouncing around in the air, vanishing and re-emerging sporadically. Someone had apparently unlocked the power of teleportation. That was even worse. The more gates a warden could access, the more powerful they became. Moku had to risk it. As she descended from her next jump, she angled her staff at a shallower angle with the road below. A couple of city guard on horseback were galloping her way. She grimaced but accepted the odds. Before she even touched down, she tucked her legs up and shouted, "Spring!" Willing the spring to activate with even more force, it tore up the cobblestones. The twang sounded wrong as she launched herself down the road. Zipping like an arrow, Moko whizzed over the guardsmen and flew just over the rooftops. She was finally in the business and residential areas. She could do this, just as long as her spring didn't give out. The witch pulled up her staff. She'd need to do a shorter jump first before trying another long one. Thankfully, her staff spring didn't sound too diseased when it released and propelled her over the homes. "Watch out! The warden is closing the distance," Seam warned, but it was already too late. A golden portal opened up near her. Moko could have sworn that she had heard great iron doors clanging open as the air was rent open in a perfect circle. A young woman and an older mustached man in flowing white robes and silver armor collided with her. The three of them plummeted in an ungraceful tangle of limbs. Moku barely held on to her staff as she bounced against the unforgiving roof. "Ouch! I'm going to be feeling that later. Get up now or you won't be feeling anything," Seam hissed. Rolling to the side onto her feet, Moku pulled down her goggles. They got knocked askew on her landing. She glimpsed the golden aura radiating from the girl before her vision returned to half-lit nighttime. The warden was like the written warrior, just around her age. Too bad. They might have been good friends in another life, in another city. "Be careful, girl. This witch is a wily one," the old man muttered heavily, getting up with a stagger. The nameless gate warden jumped gracefully to her feet, still empowered by the unseen gates. She moved with unnatural ease. Tossing back her blonde hair and white robes, she fired back, "I will not let the wraiths claim her. This victory is ours." "Good luck with that," Moku said, wheeling her staff back into her hands. The warden pulled a sword of fire from out of the air. Moku stiffened. How many gates could this girl open? She was a prodigy. The older gentleman, who seemed to be a kind of observer and high-ranking officer, unslung a richly decorated sparker from under his left arm. "How many people have sparkers in this city?" Seam complained. "Too many," Moku growled as she attacked. She danced across the rooftop, sending a flurry of iron at the gate warden. The blonde girl attacked effortlessly. She matched Moku's speed and parried each attack with legend-like grace and skill. She attacked the gear witch as well, pushing Moku back towards the streets. The horsemen had already turned around and were making their way back. They were joined by a wrangler as well, the same one in the gear witch armor. Apparently crashing into that tower hadn't been enough to rattle him senseless. Seam dutifully kept Moku apprised of all these developments, while keeping his gear eyes on the horizons for any sign of the wraiths. "Got any more parts you can cough up?" Moku sent to her hat. "A few, but not much. When I say so, spit at the rest of the girl. I'm going to take out her mentor." Just as she thought that, the gate warden effortlessly smacked her staff aside. The fire burned Moku's hand. She dropped her weapon with a hiss, and the warden slapped it away and down the road. "Now!" Moku shouted. Seam spewed out the last of his stored knickknacks. The gate warden was far more disciplined than her wrangler colleague. She barely flinched or blinked at the bits of metal as the bits of metal sprayed across her face. However, her determined concentration blinded her to Moku's free hand. A fire orb sailed between the warden and her officer. "Surrender!" the blonde girl commanded as Moku grabbed Seam's brim and dropped onto his knees. "Ouch!" Seam screamed as the warden's blast cut through him. Moku was singed as well, but she was shielded from the fiery blast. The mustached man's cry was cut short with a loud, fierce bang. The blonde warden hardly stumbled as she held the fiery sword to Moku's face, but when she heard her companion go down, the gate warden broke. She whipped her head around, calling for help. Though another fragment of her soul slipped back inside, Moku's nasty trick made her feel a little guilty. Still, she couldn't stop and let herself get caught. Once more willing her staff into her hands, the Gear Witch swept her opponent down by bashing her knees. She immediately followed through, activating her staff's bludgeoning effect, and sent the warden spinning with a nasty crack. Not wasting another second, Moku screamed, "Spring!" But as she flew away from the third scrimmage, Seam warned, "Pick up the pace! The Wraiths are here!" Her heart raced. Moku was low on resources and nearly out of tricks. Her brother could fight a Wraith and win, but she was not in the right shape to survive that kind of fight. Angling her staff at another dangerously low angle, she flew down the road, the wind whistling loudly in her ears, almost deafening her to the danger from above. A golden circle overhead ripped another hole in the air. She looked up in horror. A lanky, tortured creature covered in scars dropped on top of her. His wide grin shone in the dim light, while a fluttering gray hood covered the rest of his face. A clawed hand reached for Moku, and in that instant, she knew. He was a Gear Wraith. One touch meant death. Heaving upwards, she kicked the Wraith's hand aside. Her right boot instantly burst into shreds of leather and bits of rusted iron and steel. The cool air hit her stocking, drenched with sweat, and sent a chilled spike up Moku's leg. But the move paid off. The Wraith crashed face first into the road. Moku tumbled and rolled, putting her staff underneath her. The monster was already recovering, clawing his way out of the road. There was barely a scratch on his face. The wicked grin turned downwards in a bestial snarl. With a strangled cry, the Gear Wraith launched himself at Moku. She managed to get back onto her feet, not into her feet, back onto her feet before flying away with a strained boing. The Wraith's fingers grasped thin air, but he didn't give up. He recklessly threw himself skyward, but Moku's staff proved stronger. The young witch soared out of his reach, and the Wraith crashed back onto the cobblestones. He didn't even stagger as he transitioned back into a hard-pressed sprint. Breathing hard, Moku angled herself to fly straight to the bottom of the wall. She needed to get ahead of the Gear Wraith, and only had one chance to do it. Moku landed hard, but managed the correct trajectory. Once more, she sped like an arrow. Just as she reached the border of the city, the young witch pulled up her staff, and shouted, "Spring!" The wall's stonework raced past her like a rushing river as she flew skyward. The ramparts appeared in a blast of nightly wind. Her speed decreased and gravity took hold, but she was ready. Moku's right foot touched down onto blessedly stable, cool stone, followed by her left. She dashed for the edge, ready to fly again when she collided with something solid. A man wielding thick, convoluted chains jumped out from behind the other side of the wall, blocking her path. He was heavily scarred with a white patch and cord over his left eye, and just like so many of the others Moku had confronted on her escape, he seemed too young. His chains moved seemingly of their own accord. "Gear Witch," she breathed. "Damn it, I thought I was going to make it before any of them could cut me off." He drew a long, curved sword, but did not point it at her. Holding the handle in one hand, missing the pinky, he glared back at her. His voice was coarse as he whispered, "Did you really attack the Tetsukan?" Amazed, Moku almost gasped, "Yes!" The witch nodded and rasped, "Hitomu Ken, is he dead?" "Yes," she repeated, a little more calmly this time, resisting the urge to glance behind and check her pursuers. Moku added, "I killed him myself." "Proof!" he demanded. She set her staff to the side and willed it to stay put. "I need to get it out of my satchel. Will you give me a moment?" The gear witch nodded curtly. Moku quickly twisted the gears and commanded the sack to let her retrieve her grandfather's masterpiece. In a second, she held up the infinite codex. It wasn't exactly proof that Hitomu was dead, but hopefully he understood. Luckily, the young man did. His right eye became watery as he croaked, "Hit me!" "What? You need to make it look convincing. Hit me hard and escape. I can let you go just this once." Moku didn't hesitate. She slid the codex back into her satchel and snatched up her staff. She clubbed him once and then bolted over the side, blood thundering in her ears. The gear witch positioned her staff and commanded the spring to release. She put all her will and desire into this flight. The resulting twang sounded painful, but she flew like a fairy tale over the dark landscape. She pulled back on her goggles and saw the world clearly once again. There was a hill in the distance. She nearly reached it before she could land again. Her spring lasted 3 more jumps before it snapped and became useless. By then, Kyokikan was far behind her, and as Great Ring Dunko passed in front of the moon, the gear witch vanished. Slipping away into a dark forest, Moku whispered to the sea, "Wah! We almost didn't make it back there. Thank you for having my back. More precisely, I have your head. You'd lose it if I wasn't there for you," Seam huffed. I expect you'll show me real gratitude and do more than just simply patch me up. I'll see what I can do. Money won't be an issue, but we need to find a place to lie low." "Excellent. We deserve a vacation," Seam said, sounding pleased for a change. Moku grinned to herself and said, "Then point me. Where's the next adventure? It can't be any crazier than what we just went through." Her hat groaned in reply. All right. So there you have it. Dryge had to go. Thanks, Dryge. I know you're already gone, but thanks for sticking around.
I want to know what are your thoughts on your own chapter?
Where are my thoughts on my own chapter?
Yeah.
Say, I definitely need to clean up some of the repetitiveness of some of the words.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely want to once some of that repetitiveness and once some of the correct words are put in, I think the action will flow better. But I think I need to capture the feel of the city a little bit better.
Yeah.
To fully help people envision what I'm seeing right there. Because in a way, it's kind of like Luthadel from Mistborn, but nowhere near like as many weird, crazy towers. But almost kind of like when you look at a picture of Athens and you see how everything slopes up to the Parthenon and then it kind of comes down. That's kind of what I'm envisioning, except with palaces wrapped around that hill.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's a really good beginning. Like, I think you've done a great job of kind of setting up the world, setting up the expectation, setting up kind of the, like, obviously this is going to have quite a bit of action in it, this story. But I think I'd agree with what you're saying. Like, I feel like there could be a better job, maybe capturing the emotions of the city as well. Like, beyond just like, here's what it looks like. More of like here's what the city feels like, you know.
Okay, that's good to keep in mind.
Yeah,
make the city an actor, not just a place.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I think I enjoyed it.
On a sec here, I had to take a drink. There's as far as like beginnings go, like that's the opening chapter, but there is another chapter that's kind of meant to be like the pairing Moku's adventure, where things are then way slower. That shows that it's not just all action and violence, but that there's also planning, conniving, actual dialogue. As I introduce the other two main characters of the story, Sai and Reisu, who are plotting Reisu is getting roped into helping out with a heist that he's not really big on, and Sai is kind of forcing him in a way into this, and that's where Moku's going to end up later in this city and as a part of the group that will be in a violent treasure hunt. So that's what that's all building on up to. But yeah, no, this definitely a first draft opening. And okay. I like that you bring up like make the feel of the city, like how does the city feel? And reminds me, make the city an actor, not just a setting.
Yeah. So well, and I also feel like oftentimes, people rely, and this is true for all writers, no matter how experienced you are. We have a tendency to rely on just the visual aspect of like the world around us, but we don't often take the time to also talk about the emotional, the physical, like how does the air feel? Like, is it moist, humid? Is it dry? And or how do things smell? How do things how does it taste? There's a lot of senses that we tend to not talk about as much in books, partially because it's, imagine an entire book talking about how different places taste would be a little odd. Where that was the primary thing that we were using to describe the world around us. But I think to the flip side, we have a tendency to not talk about it enough. And so I think that could be a good way to kind of make the city a little bit more alive, is by bringing in more of the other senses, and that's true for just about any writer.
Yeah, I definitely need to make Kyokukan feel more alive, like the other city where most of the story takes place, Shiniyama, which is there at the beach, which is there at the ocean front. And so I definitely put it more into. I definitely have more detail there into the smell and the feel, and the way that the people act there. And so that needs that at least for a nighttime setting where the city is all in an uproar, I need to be able to kind of bring that as well to Kyokan.
Yeah. My question is who's the person using the Camille's Harem account, because that's not me who's sending those.
I believe that's Scott. I'm almost positive that's Scott. Yeah, just show some of the reactions of the people that live in the city. That's you will never know. So yeah, that's all good. And again, this is going to be interesting writing Gear Witch, because it's a very different from anything that I've done so far. And I will admit, in many ways, there's definitely a lot of heavy borrowing from Mistborn, as far as like various roles that the characters play, the setup. It's just that after that setup, I take it in a very different direction.
Yeah.
But as ISO says right here, it seems silly. Not exactly silly, but more lighthearted, and yet there's still a struggle and talk of death. So I feel that's a good misdirection of theme. I really do enjoy this. Thank you, ISO. Like, that was actually something when I first was writing this. So there is one part of the chapter that I really did actually put a little bit of second draft effort into. was with the gear wraith, because because when I first wrote that, it seemed too silly. It went by too fast. And I was like, no, I need to have just a slight more sense of dread and urgency as this thing is chasing chasing Moko. And I especially like having her face off with the Wraith right here at this part, because she'll get to meet another Wraith in a very different circumstance that ends up being such a contrast to everything that you got there in that first chapter. So that's something I'm looking forward to. Then let's see here. Art says that was a lot, but it's quite obvious he put a ton of effort into it. Well, thank you. Especially the part about the codex. I love that. I'm looking forward to actually using it, to showing off what the codex can actually do in story, as that's a fun thing. There's purpose behind it. Art says, I walked through the city, I could barely breathe with all the exhaust pouring out from all the cars and streets honking at each other. Yeah, that's definitely a good way of showing like a good busy city. Like Phoenix. Blah. From the pace while also establishing the world at the same time will be the hardest part of this. Yes, it'll take me going back and not just simply adding stuff, but definitely rewriting some of these moments. This isn't just simply, add a sentence here, take out the sentence there, which is what so many of us often feel like we're doing when we're editing. That's like, I'll just tweak this little bit right here, and now it reads beautifully. Sometimes you can do that, but other times, nope. You look at it and you're like, I'm sorry, I may really like what I've written right here, but I got to kill my little darling right here in order to rewrite it so it works really well. But if Don can do it, I'm sure you can, Lars. I hope that one day I can write as well for Don. That's fantastic stuff. Well, all right. We've been at this now for almost 3.5 hours here. Woo-wee. Hoo-wee. So again, I just want to say thank you to everyone who submitted their work for us to read right here. Again, we acknowledge that's a really scary thing to do. You guys did it. You are already awesome for doing that just alone. But everything that we read was good. We saw, like, I was hooked with each and every single story. There was good stuff that I saw. Of course, there's always room for improvement, as you can even see with my work. And I mean, that's what we're here for. We're here to help each other out to learn, to grow and improve, become the best that we can be. And I hope that Nathan and I were able to give you some things to chew on that will really help you out going forward with your writing. Any last words that you'd like to give, Nate?
I was just going to say, I hope that we helped encourage your writing and helped you I hope that we were able to help your story shine the brightest it can shine. And I hope nobody felt any sort of discouraged, because although we did share some ways that we felt like these stories could improve, all in all of the stories that were shared, we really enjoyed the concept of it. We really enjoyed even what was already written. And I just hope that everybody uses this feedback as a way to wow, my brain just shut off. I think it's getting time. I hope everybody feels encouraged to continue to write after this.
Yeah, I hope so as well, because you guys are doing great. The more you keep doing, the better you guys are going to get, and I see a bright future for all y'all. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for being here with us for this night. for sticking with us for more than 3 hours to go through all of this reading, and for being respectful in the chat like you guys always are. You guys are absolutely phenomenal. I says, honestly, I do feel encouraged. My writing often shifts for each scene. The knowing my action scenes are at least decent is a good sign that I'm on the right track. Excellent. Hannah says, have a good night, everyone. You as well, Hannah. So, again, thank you so much for being here with us. And until that pizza energy equals low. Yeah, time to put some more energy into, at least into me. I got to go eat a good proper dinner and not the quick thing that I just snarfed down before hopping on. So, everyone, until the next video, y'all, choose.
Later.